ओके। सो अभी तक हमने देखा कि हाउ टू रिकॉर्ड द डेटा। डेटा रिकॉर्डिंग के लिए क्या प्रोसेस है, कहाँ कहाँ पे आर्टिफैक्ट्स आ सकते हैं, बहुत सारी चीजें। नेक्स्ट सेशन में डॉक्टर प्रदीप हमसे फिर से जुड़ेंगे। जो भी भाई बहनों ने पैरेलल सेशन के लिए, एक्टिविटी के लिए पार्टिसिपेट करने के लिए अपने नाम दिए हैं, वो हिस्ट्री हॉल में डॉक्टर शुभांगी और मिस रिचा, ये दो फैकल्टीज हमारे वहाँ पर सेशन लेंगे। बहुत अच्छे से आप समझेंगे अबाउट कि क्या क्या कॉग्निटिव फैक्टर्स हैं जो मेडिटेशन में या किसी भी और अलग अलग एक्सपेरिमेंटेशन में हम रिकॉर्ड कर सकते हैं। कैसे वो उस तरह का डेटा फिजियोलॉजिकल के अलावा जो डेटा हम रिकॉर्ड करते हैं, जो हमारे बिहेवियर के बारे में अलग अलग एस्पेक्ट्स बताता है, अटेंशन, मेमोरी, इस तरह के अलग अलग एस्पेक्ट्स को बताता है, उसको हम वहाँ पे समझेंगे। तो पैरेलल सेशन, क्योंकि समय की तंगी है, समय का थोड़ा अभाव है, इसलिए हम पैरेलल सेशन में शुरू करेंगे। इस सेशन में मेजरली अबाउट द एनालिसिस पार्ट रहेगा कि डेटा को हम किस तरह से देखते हैं, और डेटा देखते समय हम डेटा जिस समय हम देखेंगे उसमें किस तरह के विजुअलाइजेशन डेटा में हमको दिख सकते हैं, वो उस बारे में हम डॉक्टर प्रदीप हमको थोड़ा सा एनलाइटन करेंगे। इससे पहले एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट पार्ट हमने अभी देख लिया, डेटा कैसे रिकॉर्ड करना है, डेटा किस तरह से आ रहा है कि नहीं आ रहा है वो आइडेंटिफाई हमने कर लिया। अब ये सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट है कि इसके बाद सब्जेक्ट जो है, जो वॉलंटियर है, उनको फ्री कैसे किया जाए, और उसके अलावा कैप का टेक केयर करना बहुत जरूरी है, क्योंकि जब भी आप एक सिस्टम को यूज करते हैं तो उसके सारे पार्ट्स को आपको बहुत अच्छे से ध्यान से रखना है। तो फर्स्ट एंड फॉरमोस्ट पार्ट इज, जब भी आप डेटा रिकॉर्ड कर चुके होंगे, डेटा रिकॉर्ड करने के बाद मशीन को ऑफ करना है, और मशीन को ऑफ करने के बाद सारे प्लग्स को अलग हटाना है। सारे प्लग्स को अलग हटाने के बाद जब ईईजी कैप को हटाएंगे, बाकी सेंसर्स हमने हटा दिए हैं, सिंपल आप खोल सकते हैं, बट ईईजी कैप को हटाने के लिए सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट ये है कि ईईजी कैप को इस तरह से ओपन करेंगे। ईईजी कैप में क्योंकि हमने जेल भरा था, तो ये जो भाई हैं इनके सर में भी अलग अलग जगह पर जेल होगा, तो एक बार उनको बता देंगे कि सर पर हाथ ना रखें, और इस जेल कैप को अलग करके हम रखेंगे। भाई को हम पहले बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद देंगे, इनके लिए तालियां बजाएंगे। पूरे लगभग 2.5 से पौने 3 घंटे तक इन्होंने समय दिया है अपना, विच इज वेरी क्रूशियल फॉर आर लर्निंग। तो इनको थैंक्स बोलने के बाद अब हमको कैप को कैसे वॉश करना है उसको थोड़ा सा समझेंगे। आप चाहें तो बैठ सकते हैं, आप चाहें तो जा भी सकते हैं ना। कैप को जब हम देखेंगे तो कैप, ये बहुत सेंसिटिव कैप है ना। ये इलास्टिक मटेरियल जो होता है, और इस कैप का जो कॉस्ट है वो भी बहुत ज्यादा है, लगभग 1.5 से 2 लाख के आसपास का ये कैप रहता है, कई बार शायद उससे भी ज्यादा होता है, और ये प्राइस हमेशा हर 2 साल में इंक्रीज होता जाता है, right? तो जब हम एक रिसर्च लैब में काम करते हैं तो हमारे लिए बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है कि हम सारे एस्पेक्ट को, हम अगले 5 साल, अगले 10 साल के लिए हमारे पास क्या क्या सिस्टम रहने वाला है, इसको बहुत अच्छे से ध्यान दें, राइट। सो इन दैट प्रोसेस, इसको क्लीन करने के लिए हम टूथब्रश यूज कर सकते हैं वाटर स्ट्रीम में, जो कि बहुत माइल्ड स्ट्रीम एक अगर आ रहा है उसको खोलेंगे, उसके अंदर इस जेल को क्लियर करेंगे। इस जेल को साफ करने के लिए, बिकॉज ये एक लाइक कंडक्टिव पेस्ट है, एक सॉल्ट सोल्यूशन है, तो इजीली ये यहाँ से रिमूव हो सकता है। जो सब्जेक्ट है उनको दोबारा से शैम्पू करने के लिए बोल सकते हैं इमीडिएटली। इसका कोई भी हार्मफुल इफेक्ट अभी तक ऐसा नहीं है। कई बार ईचिंग या कुछ रैशेस, बहुत रेयरली ऐसा कुछ देखा गया है, बट 99% केसेस में ऐसा नहीं होता है। बट अगर ऐसा होता है तो आप उनको सजेस्ट कर सकते हैं कि जितनी जल्दी से जल्दी वो धो ले और मॉइस्चराइज अपने सर को कर लें। कैप को वॉश करने के लिए आपको इसको ठंडे पानी की स्ट्रीम में डालना है, इसको किसी भी तरह के गर्म पानी से नहीं धोना है, वार्म वाटर भी यूज नहीं करना है, नॉर्मल वाटर जिस भी टेम्परेचर का जिस सीजन में आ रहा है उस सीजन के हिसाब से उसको यूज करना है। और सारे जगह से, क्योंकि अब जो स्ट्रक्चर है इसका कैप का, आप सब लोगों के हाथ में कैप आया है एक एक बार, कैप सबने देखा है, आपने नहीं देखा, ठीक है, इनको वो रेड वाला कैप आप एक बार दीजिए। तो कैप का आप स्ट्रक्चर देखेंगे तो ये सिलिकॉन जेल, सिलिकॉन के पैड्स हैं, है ना, सिलिकॉन रबर के हैं, और ये सिलिकॉन पैड्स इस पूरे लोकल फील्ड को बनाते हैं। हाँ, हाँ, इस लोकल फील्ड को बनाते हैं, और इस ड्यूरेशन में आपको इसको इसको क्लीन करना है। इसको क्लीन करने के लिए वाटर स्ट्रीम में डालेंगे, टूथब्रश यूज कर सकते हैं, बहुत आराम से यूज करना है, और इसको बिना किसी तरह से निचोड़ के, किसी कपड़े की तरह निचोड़ना नहीं है, बहुत आराम से किसी भी एक हैंगर पर या किसी जगह पर जहां पर धूप या एक्सेसिव हीट ना हो वहां पर सुखाना है। बहुत केयरफुली इसको यूज करके इस तरह से इसको इसको वॉश करके अगली रिकॉर्डिंग के लिए वापस तैयार करके रखना है। तो ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट एस्पेक्ट है। कई बार लगता है कि हमने एज अ रिसर्चर केवल हमने सिस्टम यूज कर लिया, यूज करने के बाद हमने इसको ऐसे ही छोड़ दिया। अगर इसको ऐसे ही छोड़ देंगे तो अगली रिकॉर्डिंग में फिर से परेशानी पैदा कर सकती है। जेल सूखने की संभावना होती है, जो कि हमेशा सूखेगा। अभी भी आप देख रहे हैं कि इसमें जेल सूखना शुरू कर चुका है, व्हाइट कलर का है ना। तो बस इसको ध्यान रखना है, बाकी सारे मशीन्स को अनप्लग करके रखना है, और देन यू आर रेडी फॉर द नेक्स्ट रिकॉर्डिंग। अंदर वाली साइड को ब्रश से कर सकते हैं बहुत आराम से, सारी, ताकि सारा जेल निकल जाए। दूसरी साइड भी इजीली कर सकते हैं। जी, आप इसको थोड़ी देर पानी में एक टब में भिगो के रख सकते हैं। उसके अंदर थोड़ा सा जो बर्तन धोने का लिक्विड होता है, डिश वॉशिंग लिक्विड या शैम्पू जो है, माइल्ड डिटर्जेंट जो भी हो, जो कि आप अपनी स्किन पर यूज कर सकते हो, उसको इस पे यूज कीजिए बहुत हल्के से झाग पैदा करने के लिए। देन यू कैन वॉश इट यूज इट। बाकी सारे क्वेश्चंस हम सौगात डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन के बाद ले सकते हैं। और पैरेलल सेशन के लिए सौगात के बाद जिन जिन लोगों को जाना है वो सारे लोग हिस्ट्री हॉल में यहाँ से डायरेक्टली जा सकते हैं। हाँ, क्वेश्चन है हमारे पास, हमारे पास।
ओम शांति। हमारे बीच में हमारे आदरणीय लक्ष्मी दीदी जी और प्रेम दीदी जी पहुंचे हैं। हम दीदियों का एक हाथ की ताली से वेलकम करेंगे। और यहाँ पर है तो एक छोटा सा ग्रुप, और लेकिन वो भट्टी भी बहुत सुचारू रूप से चले और उन्हें सारी जो गहराइयाँ हैं वो बहुत अच्छे से मिलें। आप वो सारी व्यवस्था में आप लोग बहुत व्यस्त थे, फिर भी उन्होंने कहा हम ये वाला समय है जो आ सकते हैं। हम अनीता दीदी भी हमारे बीच में आ गए हैं। हम दीदी का भी एक हाथ से वेलकम करेंगे। और मैं अभी आदरणीय लक्ष्मी दीदी जी से अनुरोध करूंगी कि अपने दो शब्द हमारे सामने रखें। ओम शांति। ओम शांति। ओम शांति। आप सभी ने 2 दिन की इस मीटिंग के अंदर बहुत अच्छा अच्छा चिंतन किया होगा। हम पूरा सुन तो नहीं पाए, लेकिन जरूर रिकॉर्डिंग होगी, बाद में सुनेंगे अच्छी तरह से बैठकर। और बाबा की आप सभी बहुत ही अनन्य रतन हैं, जिनका इस विंग में विशेष रुचि है कि हम बाबा के द्वारा दिए हुए ज्ञान को किस तरह से गहराई से चिंतन भी करें, मंथन भी करें, और उसको अपने जीवन में अप्लाई करके, परिवर्तन करके, और समाज के सामने बाबा के हम एग्जाम्पल बने। तो उसके लिए आपने बहुत अच्छा सुंदर रिसर्च के रूप से अपनी ट्रेनिंग की होगी, बहुत कुछ नया सीखा होगा। और अपनी इस विंग को भी और बाबा के कार्य को भी, बाबा का नाम बाला करने के लिए आपका ये जो बहुत ही विशेष नया प्रोजेक्ट है, तो उसके लिए बहुत बहुत हमारी भी शुभकामनाएं हैं। हम भी आपकी जो सारी चीजें हैं उससे सीखने का और ज्यादा ज्ञान को अपने जीवन में कैसे अप्लाई करके समाज को एक सुंदर उदाहरण प्रस्तुत करें, उसके लिए बाकी भाई बहनों के लिए भी आप एक एग्जाम्पल बनेंगे, ऐसी हमारी शुभकामना है। बाकी ठंड बहुत ज्यादा थी और आप सबको यहाँ रहते हुए किसी भी तरह की कोई असुविधा हुई हो रहन सहन में, भोजन में, तो अपना घर समझ के आप उसे, आप तो क्या मन पे रखेंगे, आप तो पहले ही मन को परिवर्तन करने वाले और उसकी जांच करने वाले हैं। लेकिन अगर आपका कोई सुझाव हो इसको और बेटर बनाने के लिए, तो वो आप जरूर जाने से पहले लिख करके देना। और फिर से आपको निमंत्रण है, ऋषिहुड यूनिवर्सिटी यहाँ बिल्कुल नजदीक है, वहां पर आपका एमओयू हुआ है, वहां पर भी कुछ विशेष सेवाएं होंगी, तो आप सब फिर आते रहें। ओम शांति।
पॉजिटिव आसी इन्फेक्शन एचबीएसजी पॉजिटिव आसी सेटा तुमे टिके जाई कि कंफर्म करिवो।
मैं आदरणीय प्रेम दीदी जी से भी अनुरोध
ब्लड
करूंगी
टेस्ट
कि
कंफर्म हो
दीदी
जाई परिवो
सब
नहले
सभी
सीटीसी
भाई
रे
बहनों को
देखिए नहले तो एलाइसा टेस्ट पई बाहर को ब्लड पठा हुए
ओम
सेटा
शांति।
हेपेटाइटिस बी
बहुत
पॉजिटिव
अच्छा आपने मंथन किया होगा। मुझे जब कहा गया कि आपने गिफ्ट देनी है
सब
तो
घाटे
मुझे बात याद आई
दिलेनी टीबीएस पीबीएस
कि
करके
शिव बाबा इस धरती पर आए
करथांती
और हम बच्चों ने उसे जाना पहचाना, और शिव बाबा हमारे लिए क्या लाए हैं? हमारे लिए लाए हैं गिफ्ट और लिफ्ट। क्या लाए हैं? गिफ्ट और लिफ्ट। ठीक है। साकार में बाबा थे, मधुबन में जाते थे तो बाबा हर बच्चों को गिफ्ट जरूर देते थे।
पॉजिटिव
तो वो अभी बाबा की जो प्रथा है कि बाबा के घर में जो बच्चा आएगा उसको गिफ्ट मिलेगी। आप जब गिफ्ट लेंगे तो बाबा तो याद आएगा ही। दूसरा लिफ्ट है। इस लिफ्ट में क्या होता है? 1 सेकंड में ऊपर जाओ और तीनों लोकों से पार परम धाम। कैसे जाते हैं? कोई मेहनत है? ये लिफ्ट हमें बाबा ने संगम युग पर ही दी है। ना सतयुग, ना त्रेता युग, ना द्वापर युग, ना कलयुग। तो इस लिफ्ट को आप सब अच्छी तरह से प्रयोग करते हैं। कोई खर्च नहीं, कोई मेहनत नहीं, बैठो और बाबा के घर में पहुंचो। तो बाबा का हर समय हमें थैंक्स करना है कि 5000 वर्ष में एक ही बार हम भगवान से मिलते हैं, सर्व संबंधों के अनुभव करते हैं और फिर 5000 वर्ष के लिए अपना पुण्य का खाता जमा करते हैं। तभी बाबा कहते हैं बच्चे खूब पुरुषार्थ करो। मम्मा हमेशा कहती थी स्लोगन लिख दो, अब नहीं तो कब नहीं। मनमोहिनी दीदी जी कहते थे अब घर जाना है, अब घर जाने का समय है। और अपने प्रकाशमणि दादी क्या कहते थे? निमित्त बनो, निर्मल बनो, निर्माण बनो। बाबा ने हमें कौन से 3 शब्दों से श्रृंगारा? निराकारी, निर्विकारी, निरहंकारी। हमारे बड़ों ने हमारी झोली में
तो मैं एक्चुअली
ज्ञान रत्नों
डाउट है कि तुम्हें
कितनी
माने कौन
गिफ्ट
कहते
दी है। तो ये
ହେଲା
जब आपको गिफ्ट मिलेगी तो सब ज्ञान रत्नों की गिफ्ट जो है इसी में पैक होगी। आप इसको यूज करेंगे और बाबा सदा याद रहेगा। थैंक्स बाबा का। और आपका फिर से स्वागत है। एक बार नहीं, बार बार आइए यहाँ। जब आप मर्जी आकर के स्पार्क विंग की भट्टी करो, मीटिंग करो, आप आए, हमें बहुत अच्छा लगा। बाबा हमेशा कहते थे कि बाबा के घर का श्रृंगार है बच्चे। जब हम बाबा से मधुबन से विदाई लेते थे तो बाबा गीत लगाया करती थी, तालियां। उस समय रिकॉर्ड होता था, भगवान तेरे घर का श्रृंगार जा रहा है। तो बाबा बहुत प्यार से कहते थे कि ये जो बच्चे हैं ना, ये भगवान के घर का श्रृंगार है। तो सदा हमें इस नशे में रहना है, खुशी में रहना है और शक्ति में रहना है। ओम शांति।
दीदी, और जैसे कि आदरणीय लक्ष्मी दीदी जी ने एक शब्द यूज किया था कि कल ऋषिहुड यूनिवर्सिटी के साथ यहाँ का ब्रह्मा कुमारी स्पार्क विंग का एक एमओयू साइन हुआ है, और जिसके निमित्त खास अंबिका दीदी भी यहाँ आए, और ये रिट्रीट सेंटर भी नजदीक है जिसका लाभ अभी सब लोग ले सकते हैं। तो मैं अनीता दीदी जी से अनुरोध करूंगी कि वो इसके बारे में हमारे समक्ष रखें।
ओम शांति। सुशील भाई जी भी 2 मिनट आ जाते। ओम शांति। कल एक ऐतिहासिक दिन था, जबकि एक तरफ ऋषिहुड यूनिवर्सिटी और दूसरी तरफ ब्रह्मा कुमारीज वर्ल्ड स्पिरिचुअल यूनिवर्सिटी, दोनों के बीच एक मेमोरेंडम ऑफ अंडरस्टैंडिंग साइन हुआ, बहुत विधिवत तरीके से, जिसमें इधर से स्पार्क विंग के चेयरपर्सन अंबिका दीदी और पंजाब जोन कोऑर्डिनेटर, दिल्ली कोऑर्डिनेटर और हमारी एकता बहन जी जो सारे रिसर्च कराती है, और ऐसे 5 लोग हम थे, डॉक्टर सुशील चंद्र भाई जी। उधर से यूनिवर्सिटी के चांसलर सुरेश प्रभु जी, वाइस चांसलर, सीईओ, डीन और रजिस्ट्रार, एसोसिएट प्रोफेसर, असिस्टेंट प्रोफेसर, ऐसे लगभग 8 लोगों की टीम थी, और उसके ओनर भी आए हुए थे जो बाद में आए थे, को फाउंडर, वो भी आए हुए थे। और बड़ी उनकी होप थी, और रिस्पेक्टफुली उन्होंने बहुत ऑब्लाइज्ड फील किया कि ब्रह्मा कुमारीज हमारे साथ एमओयू कर रहे हैं, और संसार में हम लैक कर रहे हैं रियल स्पिरिचुअल एनर्जी। और इसको इंट्रोड्यूस करते हुए हमारे डॉक्टर सुशील चंद्रा भाई जी ने एक शब्द यूज किया, मनसा सेवा। तो उन्होंने पूछा ये क्या होता है, तो उन्होंने उसको एक्सप्लेन किया कि हम अपनी मेंटल एनर्जी डोनेट करते। कहते अब तक और बहुत कुछ सुना था कि भगवान से प्रार्थना करते हैं, ये दे दो वो दे दो, स्पिरिचुअलिटी के नाम पे ये रिचुअल वो रिचुअल ये सब होता है, पर ये पहली बार सुन रहे हैं कि आप लोग ऐसा भी कुछ काम करते हैं। और वो जिंदल हॉस्पिटल हिसार, उसकी जिंदल स्टील इंडस्ट्रीज की मैनेजिंग डायरेक्टर दीपिका जी भी साथ में थी, और उनके हॉस्पिटल में बहुत बड़ा प्रोजेक्ट हम लोग चला रहे हैं मनसा सेवा का, और उस पर रिजल्ट भी बहुत आ रहे हैं। तो उन्होंने जब ये सुना तो इतना ज़्यादा अप्रिशिएट किया और थैंकफुल हुए कि हमारी यूनिवर्सिटी के साथ आप एमओयू कर रहे हैं, तो बहुत सारे म्यूचुअल अंडरस्टैंडिंग के सब्जेक्ट्स पे हम रिसर्च करेंगे। और खुशी की बात ये है कि उसके लिए सबसे पहला टारगेट प्लेस जो होगा वो सोनीपत रिट्रीट सेंटर होगा। और जो भी ग्रुप्स इसके बाद भट्टी के आएंगे, उसमें कुछ सिलेक्टिव ग्रुप के ऊपर ये रिसर्च के प्रोग्राम शुरू होंगे। और ये रिसर्च साधारण बात नहीं है, ये बाबा की प्रत्यक्षता की और एक रियल वाला कदम है, जो ऑथेंटिकली ये समझ आएगा कि आध्यात्मिक शक्ति संसार की बाकी सब शक्तियों से, चाहे साइंटिफिक पावर, इकोनॉमिक पावर, फिजिकल पावर, पॉलिटिकल पावर, सबसे ऊपर होती है। ये साइंटिफिक पावर जो माइंड को एम्पावर करती है, उसके प्रूफ्स हमारे सामने आ जाएंगे। तो इसलिए हम सारे भाई बहनों का, सुशील भाई का, सबका आप भी जो ट्रेनिंग ले रहे हो, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद करते हैं कि इतना सुंदर कार्य आप सबकी प्रेजेंस में शुरू हुआ। हमें प्राउड है आप सब पर। बहुत बहुत थैंक्स। ओम शांति।
शांति। थैंक यू दीदी, आपने बहुत अच्छे से कल के एमओयू के बारे में और वहाँ के जो एनवायरनमेंट था साइन करते हुए सब हमारे सामने रखा। सुशील भाई का बहुत पहले से स्पार्क को लेकर विजन था कि हम एजुकेशन की फील्ड में ज़रूर कुछ करें, और वो बार बार अपनी जितनी भी मोटिवेशन उनकी होती थी रिसर्च के प्रति, वो सब स्पार्क के भाई बहनों को कहते थे जो भी रिसर्च में आना चाहते हैं कि हमारे पास बहुत मार्जिन है, ये करें। और बाबा ने उन्हें निमित्त बनाया कि डीआरडीओ के रिटायरमेंट के बाद आप स्वयं ही इस एजुकेशन फील्ड में आए। और ये मैं समझती हूँ बाबा की ही प्लानिंग है कि आप ऐसी वैल्यू बेस्ड यूनिवर्सिटी में बाबा ने आपको भेजा, और जहाँ पर हम एक अच्छे कार्य की शुरुआत कर सके। और जो मैं समझती हूँ सुशील भाई की जो शुभ इच्छाएं हैं स्पार्क को लेकर, और वहाँ से पूरी ज़रूर होंगी, और साथ में रिट्रीट सेंटर का सहयोग तो है ही। तो सुशील भाई आप भी दो शब्द कहें।
ओम शांति। मैं पहले थोड़ा सा लाइट वे में कहना चाहूँगा। जैसे कल जब एमओयू हो रहा था तो हमारे जब चांसलर प्रभु जी ने, सुरेश प्रभु जी ने बोला, तो उसके बाद में जो जैसा दीदी ने अभी बोला, को फाउंडर को बोलने के लिए कहा गया। तो को फाउंडर ने छूटते ही कहा कि जब प्रभु जी बोल चुके हैं तो फिर मुझे बोलने की शायद सक्षमता भी नहीं है। तो वही मेरे साथ हो रहा है कि जब तीन बड़ी बहनें इतना बढ़िया तरीके से पूरा एक्सप्लेन कर चुकी हैं, तो मैं केवल एक लाइन बोलूंगा कि यस, बाबा ने शायद ऐसा बहुत अच्छा मौका दिया जो एकता बहन ने अभी लास्ट में बोला कि मुझे ऋषिहुड में यहाँ पर एक रोल मिला। और ऋषिहुड की हमारी पूरी टीम, वो अभी भी फैकल्टी हमारी यहाँ मौजूद है, न केवल मैनेजमेंट बट वो लोग भी इच्छुक हैं कि हम लोग अगर राज्य का मेडिटेशन से लेकर स्पेशली एजुकेशन के सेक्टर में जो भी हमारी, चाहे वो स्कूल एजुकेशन है चाहे हायर एजुकेशन है, वो हमारी फ्यूचर जनरेशन है। तो उसमें किस तरीके से हम लोग उनको फ्यूचर बेटर सिटीजन, जो बाबा बोलते हैं ना, बेटर फ्यूचर वर्ल्ड, तो उसको लाने में हम किस तरीके से साइंटिफिक टूल्स का भी कैसे कर सकते हैं, उसके लिए पूरी हमारी एक, बाबा एक शब्द और यूज करते हैं ना, आर्मी तैयार हो गई है। तो मुझे उम्मीद है आप सभी लोग और भी जगहों पे जाके न केवल यहाँ पर सीखेंगे बल्कि उसको और जगह भी जाके सब जगह पे डाटा शुरू हो सकता है। और जैसा दीदी ने बोला, शुरुआत यहाँ से हो रही है, तो इस सेंटर का, दीदियों का, पंजाब जोन का स्पेशल थैंक्स। विद थैंक्स बाबा। ओम शांति।
ओम शांति। तो हम सब ने वरदानी शब्दों की सौगात ली, इस ट्रेनिंग की सौगात मिली। अब बाबा के साथ कुछ घर के लिए भी, बाबा कहते हैं ना माता पिता के घर से जाते हैं तो माता पिता आगे के लिए भी भरपूर करते हैं। तो आप सब ने तो यहाँ चोली भी खाई, ब्लेसिंग्स भी ली, सब लिया, लेकिन ईश्वरीय वरदान के रूप में भी सौगात आप सबको घर के लिए मिलेगी और टोली भी मिलेगी। तो आदरणीय दीदियाँ हमको सौगात देंगी। मैं सबसे पहले रिक्वेस्ट करूँगी बी के टीचर्स जो हैं वो आएंगे सौगात के लिए। उसके बाद ऋषिहुड यूनिवर्सिटी से जो फैकल्टीज आई हुई हैं वो आएंगे और आदरणीय दीदियों से सौगात और टोली लेंगे। इसके बाद में जो हमारे बी के भाई बहने आए हैं अलग अलग स्थानों से, वो सब आकर सौगात और ब्लेसिंग्स लेंगे। और कुछ स्टूडेंट्स भी आए हैं ऋषिहुड यूनिवर्सिटी से, तो फिर लास्ट में वो भी आके सौगात और ब्लेसिंग्स।
सुशील भाई जी आइए, पहले आपको स्वागत। दीदी आप स्वागत।
सो बी के टीचर्स बहनों से अनुरोध है वो आएंगे।
आपका धन्यवाद करें, रात की ये सेवा हम याद करें, रात की ये सेवा।
ऋषिहुड यूनिवर्सिटी से जो फैकल्टीज आई हैं वो भी आगे आ जाए। टीचर्स बहनें जो आई हैं प्लीज आ जाए। अच्छा, जो सेंटर पे रहते हैं
ये सेवा हम याद करें, जिन शब्दों में आपका धन्यवाद करें। बेहद का प्यार आपने हमको दे दिया, तेरा
अच्छा,
हमें बना
साक्षी
कर
आप भी तो सेंटर पे है।
प्यार है किया, श्रीमत से मन चमन को आवाज हम करें, किन शब्दों में आपका धन्यवाद करें, दिन रात की ये सेवा हम याद करें, किन शब्दों में आपका धन्यवाद करें।
साक्षी बहन और शुभांगी बहन, आप दोनों बाबा के बच्चे भी हैं, आप विश्व कल्याणी सरोवर में रहते भी हैं और आप ऋषिहुड यूनिवर्सिटी से पीएचडी भी कर रहे हैं, और ये जो प्रोग्राम में पूरा पूरा आप अपना सहयोग दे रहे हैं। दोनों ही बच्चों के बाबा के बच्चे
किन शब्दों में आपका धन्यवाद करें, दिन रात की ये सेवा हम याद करें, किन शब्दों में आपका धन्यवाद करें।
तभी बीके भाई बहने आएंगे और सब थोड़ा सा फास्ट आएंगे तो कार्यक्रम को हम फास्ट बना कर सके।
संगम युग में बाबा आकर के मिलते रहना, हमने है सोचा आपसा बन कर के ही है रहना, दिल की यही है आरज़ू प्रभु साथ हम रहे, जिन शब्दों में आपका धन्यवाद करें, जिन शब्दों में आपका धन्यवाद करें, दिन रात की ये सेवा हम याद करें, दिन रात की ये सेवा हम याद करें, किन शब्दों में आपका धन्यवाद करें।
शुक्रिया आपका प्यारे प्रभु, शुक्रिया।
इसके बाद जो ऋषिहुड यूनिवर्सिटी से स्टूडेंट्स आए हैं वो सभी आ जाएं प्लीज। और भी कोई बाहर से आए हैं जो कि अभी तक राजयोगा मेडिटेशन की प्रैक्टिस नहीं करते लेकिन खाली ट्रेनिंग अटेंड करने के लिए आए हैं, वो सभी प्लीज आते जाएं।
अब तो तुम समाए हो हर सांस में, दिल की धड़कन में, तन सेवा में लगा, पर मन हर पल वतन में, आपके मोर प्रभु जादू चला दिया।
शुक्रिया आपका प्यारे प्रभु,
नहीं सपने ले सभी को मिल गया है ईश्वरीय सौगात और टोली सपने ली।
प्यारे प्रभु शुक्रिया। मुझको अपना बना लिया।
शुक्रिया आपका प्यारे प्रभु, शुक्रिया।
हमारी आदरणीय दीदियों का बहुत 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 थैंक्स है। कोई रह तो नहीं गया है, कोई बाहर से आया हो और रह गया हो? जिसने ली सब एक हाथ उठाएंगे अपना। ओके, और हमारी आदरणीय दीदियों को थैंक्स भी करेंगे। दीदी आप लोगों का बहुत बहुत थैंक्स। हम सब बहुत ज्यादा अभिभूत हैं, हमारे पास शब्द तो नहीं है आप लोगों की पालना जो इतनी श्रेष्ठ हमें मिल रही है।
इन नैनों में
1 मिनट सब साइलेंस करेंगे।
देखो, इन नैनों में बात नहीं कह देते हैं तेरे रूहानी नैन, ओ बाबा तेरे रूहानी नैन। सागर से गहरे नैन तेरे ओ बाबा, जो भी देखे इनमें वही खो जाता। सागर से गहरे नैन तेरे ओ बाबा, जो भी देखे इनमें वही खो जाता। अनमोल खजाने पाता इस सागर में जो डूब जाते, इस सागर में जो डूब जाते, पार वही हो जाते नैन तेरे रूहानी नैन, ओ बाबा तेरे रूहानी।
थैंक यू दीदी। हम दोनों दीदियों का फिर से बहुत 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 थैंक्स करेंगे। और जिन्होंने भी साइकोलॉजी के पैरेलल सेशन के लिए अपने नाम दिए हैं, वो सब आप सब बैठ जाएं। साइकोलॉजी के पैरेलल सेशन के लिए किस किस ने रजिस्टर किया था? आप सब एक तरफ आ जाएंगे प्लीज। जिन जिन ने भी पैरेलल सेशन के लिए अपने आप को रजिस्टर किया, सब एक तरफ आ जाएं। और आप सबको हिस्ट्री हॉल में जाना है। हिस्ट्री हॉल जो रेजिडेंशियल बिल्डिंग है, वहां के फर्स्ट फ्लोर पर है। तो शुभांगी, डॉक्टर शुभांगी जी और डॉक्टर रिचा, ये आपके साथ रहेंगे वहां पर, और आपको जो भी इनका सेशंस हैं वो कराएंगे। और बाकी सब जो ईईजी की ट्रेनिंग के लिए हैं, वो सब यहीं पे बैठे रहें। हमारा सेशन कंटिन्यू चलेगा। ओम शांति।
तो पैरेलल सेशन हम स्टार्ट करेंगे हियर। एक पैरेलल सेशन हिस्ट्री हॉल में चल रहा है, दूसरे सेशन को हम प्रीवियस सेशन को कंटिन्यू करते हुए अब जब पोस्ट रिकॉर्डिंग डेटा हमने रिकॉर्ड कर लिया, डेटा रिकॉर्डिंग के बाद क्या क्या चीज़ें रहती हैं, हाउ टू विजुअलाइज द डेटा, डेटा विजुअलाइजेशन के लिए कौन कौन से टूल हम यूज़ करते हैं, कौन से सॉफ्टवेयर हम यूज़ करते हैं, उसके बारे में डॉक्टर प्रदीप हमसे कनेक्टेड हो चुके हैं. तो आई विल रिक्वेस्ट डॉक्टर प्रदीप टू शेयर द स्क्रीन एंड देन यू कैन कंटिन्यू विद द सेशन.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible. Please, you can share the screen, Dr. Pradeep.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So Kanishk was telling that, he has covered most of it, but still I wanted to give this preface so that because, that becomes like, why we are like really putting in so much of effort to actually get the, noise-free signal of the actual EEG signal, which we are recording as a part of the task or the experiment. So this is the other modality where we could see that, the electroencephalogram, where it is the scalp electrical activity which we are recording. And so these are different scales, and like, where it is micro scale, meso scale, and macro scale, which I'll be discussing now in detail. So now what I mean by, micro scale is this, that, you record the voltage differences between, of a single neuron, that is between extracellular and cellular voltage. And this is what it looks like. But when it comes to group of population of neurons, this is what it looks like. That is, when you probe in with an electrode of multiple scales, that is multiple levels of brain, what we have, this is what we get. But what we are actually recording as a part of EEG is this. So you could see the complexity now. It's that, it is, millions of neurons involved in each of the region, and that is the summated activity which we are recording on the scalp. If you see, it's not even on the cortex, it is on the scalp. That means scalp also has some amount of attenuation with the signal what we are recording. So this is the layer which we are recording. So this is the complexity which we are in. Like, say if at all we are actually wanted to get to the source, that is which source is actually generating this source, it is quite tough in case of EEG, because we are on the superficial layer of the brain, that is on the scalp. So this is what we are recording. And what does EEG mean? We know that it is recording of the electrical activity of an on the surface of the brain. That's what is being highlighted here. We see that there is a lot of already the attenuation, noise, and as well as the contribution of different many such signals are involved when we record the image. So this I think you would have already covered. So, so the advantages of EEG is that it is the non-invasive thing. So you are not supposed to do any invasive thing to get this signal, and it has high temporal resolution. That means, for any task related uh, response, the temporal resolution is very high, that you will get in the brain response to that particular stimulus at very small interval, and it is affordable. Disadvantage is that, as right now I told, it is the spatial resolution, because as we told, because of this, that is, it covers our whole brain of region. When we say that, we are recording in one particular electrode, and this particular region involves these many, like, neurons, and that's how it is the symmetric activity. So that's why the spatial resolution is low, and low SNR. That is the whole point of why we have to come up with the best, or the combination of the reprocessing algorithms. So that day, that's how the EEG machine looked like when Hans Berger recorded the first EEG. You could see that, how much would be the dimension of the equipment which was used. And these days, this is how we have come to. That is, we could actually make it wireless. And like, each one of this has its own, what do you say, challenges, but wireless is also possible. That means, where people are recording even while they are moving around, but it has its own limitations, which I'll be telling. So this, anyways, Kanish would have already sort of acclimatized you for that particular notations, like what we use when we say frontal, parietal, occipital, and temporal. And this I have already discussed. And now coming to the EEG recording. So EEG recording, I say make the recording count, because that should be the slogan when we record the EEG, because there are scenarios where the noise is so high that we may have to remove some of the subjects. This is quite common in any of the experiments, because if you had read the manuscripts, that 3 subjects were left out because of the data quality, 4 subjects were left out. So the whole point of experimental recording the EEG is that to make sure that the recording counts. So what are the best practices, like, where make sure that the EEG recording is good enough to get into the analysis? So the first thing is preparing the scalp, which Dr. Ganesh would have already mentioned, that scalp preparation is very important, and keep the subject informed about this seriousness of the signal attenuation if the scalp is not ready. So anyways, Dr. Ganesh had already used the call 15 examiners to make sure that the connectivity is high, and also applying right amount of gel or saline, because once you at least in 64 electrodes machine, whatever we are using the cap is like, you have sufficient amount of distance, but when it goes to 128 to 56 electrodes, the gap between the electrode is so less that there are chances that if you push in more gel, the electrodes get connected, and whatever the recording you see from one electrode to the other electrode is the same. So you have to be careful in that regard to make sure that the gel what you apply is very much confined to the electrode, and not excess of gel is seeping out of the electrode, so that it gets connected to the electrode. The third one is checking for the impedance matching, which you have already seen the figure or the GUI, which Dr. Ganesh was showing you, to make sure that the impedance match is low, because the impedance matching will tell you the signal to noise ratio, because the higher the impedance, that means it is like more prone to noise, and the signal quality is feeble, so that you are searching signal in the noise, as I told in the previous session. So, and one important thing when you are recording the data is like, educating the subject to maintain minimum movements, because EEG is very prone to movements. And of course, I have shown you the wireless EEG system as well. But when it comes to research level recording, you have to make sure that the movements are very less. So you have to educate the subject to make sure that that the subject is not moving around or looking or moving the neck when they are recording, or even for that matter the eye blinks have to be revised. You have to tell them please blink as less as possible even during eyes open recording. During eyes closed, they are closed in their eyes, so eye artifacts are minimum, but during eyes open you have to inform the subject to make sure that the eye blinks are as less as possible. And also we have encountered a lot of challenges when we had recorded for the Raj Yoga meditation project with Dr. Kanishk and my colleague Dr. Mr. Adesh. So we have n number of case studies where the subject is like sometimes the subject may not be cooperative, sometimes the subject are cooperative. So the experimenter has to make sure that that slogan is always there, that I should make this record count. That means I should make sure that the data is fine so that it gets into the analysis and it makes the study stronger. So now this is something which we have to know what is that we are recording. So these are some of the sources which I have included here. That is the neural activity. Of course, that is the source which we wanted to study. Then we have the eye activity, which is very close to the forehead, where we have some electrodes. As Dr. Ganesh was also mentioning that, the FP and AF, that is the prefrontal and the anterior frontal electrodes, are the most affected with eye blinks. So eye activity, even the saccades, that is the movements of the eye inside. So then the muscle activity. Muscle activity is like, when I am speaking, there is change in the muscle activity in my scalp as well. And also if you clench your jaws, it's like something, if you clench your jaws, even that creates noise and there is some sort of muscle activity there. When you move around, there is change in the muscle activity, even that is captured. Because the scalp electrode is very sensitive, because it is designed in such a way that it has to capture the very feeble signal of the brain which it is being captured. And the heart activity, anyways, we know that ECG has very high amplitude, or the strength of the signal is quite high compared to the brain signal, and definitely it gets into our recording. So, and others is like movement artifacts, notch filter, and things like that. Do I have a show in chat? Little louder, okay. 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 Okay, am I audible now? Or I should keep back my. Am I audible now? Kanish?
Yes, sir. You're visible.
No, audible? Am I audible?
Yeah. You're audible.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So this is what we are recording actually. This is the scenario. The ground reality is this. So why pre-processing is required? You know it. What we wanted is the neural activity, but what we are getting is all this. So how does it get accumulated? I have not put any sum or product, because that is the a different research question. Like each of them gets added with a different weights. Some may contribute more at some point of time, some may contribute less at some point of time. So these weights keep on changing. So that's why I have not put any sign whether it is plus or it's a product or it is a weighting average. So, but end of the day, what we record is we have all these components. So that is why we have to pre-process. So pre-processing, we have different algorithms, we have signal processing methods to do that. But after pre-processing, there is one important thing which I have mentioned in blue color, that is visualize. Visualization of the data is very important. Because until unless you see the visualization, you will not get to know how clean the data is. Because sometimes our algorithm may not work for that particular artifact, and still it would have got into the pre-processed data. So until and unless you visualize, you will not get to know whether you have cleared. And this is something, a mandatory step. Even though you have, say, 100 and 150 subjects, you have to do this, at least for some subject, to see how the algorithm is working. That is, the pre-processing algorithms are working. Then what we get is the estimated neural activity, that is the EEG. So which we are talking about, the modality EEG. So it's just an estimation. I still don't say that the actual neural activity, what we are sort of, it is there, is what we are estimating. It is just an estimation of the neural activity what we have got. Now we are ready to do the analysis. So after all this, we are ready to go for any analysis, like whatever the measures we wanted to extract from the EEG and things like that. So till now, do you have any doubts? Just let me know.
किसी भाई बहन को कोई क्वेश्चंस हैं तो अभी पूछ सकते हैं अभी तक के प्रोसेस में।
Yeah.
जी। Pradeep,
Yeah.
one to you
Yeah.
is that you have put
Yeah.
down neural activity along with eye, muscle, and heart.
Mhm.
What could be kind of activity which might be working as an interference? If you can explain a bit about them.
What could be the activity? So, as I told,
Other activity. Yeah.
other activities, others. Okay. The others is what I am telling is, say, line noise. So line noise is also like, actually speaking, we are supposed to record it in a Faraday cage, because, we have to make sure that the recording is isolated with all the electromagnetic waves around. But we are not doing that, or most of the setup are not like that, that you isolate in Faraday cage. So obviously the electromagnetic waves are getting in through our recordings. So that's what I mean, others. One example is the 50 hertz, which our electrical source is, that which oscillates at 50 hertz. As you showed, even a charger, when you plug into the laptop which you are recording, that 50 hertz easily get in. And in fact, if you turn on the light, and I don't think so these diodes would oscillate at that, but earlier those incandescent tubes would oscillate at 50 hertz. So and even when you turn on the fan, there is a wire which goes from the switch to the fan, and that creates electromagnetic field at that particular frequency, and that gets into the data. So what we have to do is, strictly we have to sort of isolate everything, but we don't do that, so we have to minimize it. So we have to make sure you turn off the light if you don't use it, or you turn off everything. That is what we did in our recording setup. As you know, is there was like something like, one, it is the direct power, and the one is with the UPS power. So we turn off the direct power during the recording, so that there is no AC component inside the room. So it's like that. That's how we have to isolate the maximum noise which is getting into the data. So that's what I mean. Others is sometimes the neck movement. Sometimes what do you say? I have seen subjects moving their heads during eyes open, say that they started thinking something and things like that. So you have to make sure all these things are sort of confined. That's what I mean. Others.
So in addition to this,
Yeah.
there are few things because when we connect the cap,
Yeah.
we see that while connecting the cap, some electrodes we fill the gel, and sometime because of long duration, gel dried up. तो
Yes.
जेल सूखने की वजह से, because of gel dryness also, the impedance can be increased, or after impedance increases, the noise can be much higher. That is one part. Second part could be, अभी हम कैप यूज कर रहे हैं, बट समटाइम वी विल व्हेन वी यूज सिंगल इलेक्ट्रोड्स, तो सिंगल इलेक्ट्रोड्स कई बार उसका वायर खिंचता है, सो इलेक्ट्रोड ट्विचिंग या पॉपिंग अप होने की वजह से कई बार इलेक्ट्रोड इज नॉट कनेक्टेड टू द स्कैल्प एरिया. That time also you will receive the noise. So these are some of the things which we can consider in the others, right?
Correct. Yes. Thanks for that. Yeah. There is a lot of it. I'm like, yeah, only with
lot of experience, you will get to know that, what type of noise gets in, and then you start designing your pre-processing algorithms. Okay, so moving on from here, at least we have some confidence once we pre-process it, and that now we are ready to do the analysis. So what are that pre-processing which we have? That is the normal pipeline, what we call it as pre-processing pipeline, which all the steps we have to carry on to make sure that, at least the EEG what we are analyzing now has gone through so many steps to make sure that we say that, the EEG is free from noise. So these are the pre-processing steps what we generally do. That is, first thing is we high pass filter. That means, what do you mean by high pass is we start the signal from 1 hertz. That means less than 1 hertz we try to avoid, because that is the DC component which you were already telling, that is the direct current. So then the notched filter. Notch filter is like I just told you that, if you have the electrical sources in your room, definitely you would get 50 hertz, and that we will remove using the notch filter. That means it stops only that 50 hertz. It will not affect the other frequency bands. It will just make sure that it will stop that 50 hertz signal in the data. That means it will just attenuate that particular signals. And the bad channel rejection is something which we have to do, because not all the channels would be affected. Sometimes it's not that all channels would be noisy, but only some channels, as Dr. Kanish just now mentioned, just because you have not matched the impedance of the channel, or the gel is drying up in the channel, or the scalp resistance of the subject is changing there. So what happens now? The channel becomes bad. That means it captures a lot of noise. So first we have to identify that using PSD, that is the power spectral density. Sorry for that abbreviation there. So power spectral density is a tool which we often use to make sure that, to estimate what are the frequency components in the signal. So once we see that PSD and we say that the PSD, all the frequencies have equal strength, then we know that that is noise, especially when the higher frequency signals have higher strength. So we say that definitely that is a noise. So sometimes the decision is made on the PSD. So I'll show you in some time how do we decide that. So that's how we detect the bad channels. So let's say, assume that now we have recorded 60 channels. Out of 60 channels, say that 2 channels are bad. So that means we have to identify it. How do we identify it? Is using the PSD. Now, once we have identified the PSD, bad channel, there is something called bad segment. That means not all the entire data what we have recorded will be bad. Only some of the data would be bad. Others would be fine. So that means now we have to identify that particular segment of the data in the complete recording and say that we have to correct or eliminate only these segments. So that's how we have to, there are different algorithms to identify that as well. So bad segment identification is that, for example, we know that EEG voltage levels are -100 to 100 microvolts. So that means 100 microvolts. But if it is greater than that, we definitely know that, it is not an EEG. It could be something else. So sometimes what happens, we just take amplitude itself as a measure, saying that if the amplitude is going higher than the set value, we say that that particular segment has a artifact in it or noise in it. For example, an eye blink. You were seeing today morning where when the Bhaiji ne, close and open his eyes or for the lead movement, so we could see that there is a big spike in the EEG data. Definitely that crosses the threshold of the EEG amplitude, and that could be considered as the artifact. And there is something called independent component analysis. So this is something called as basically blind source separation, which normally I'll go back to this slide. So for example, here we had these many activities, right? So this is the recorded activity. If we use this recorded activity and send it to any independent component analysis tool, what it essentially gives is it gives back this. all of it. So it gives me all the components. And now we should decide that, whether it is a neural activity or an eye activity based on the components what it gives, and then we will take a call what to reject, what not to reject. So basically what happens is we get a composite signal which is recorded with all these sources. So component analysis will decompose this particular recorded activity back to these things, but an estimation of it. So that's what independent component analysis does. But now there is something called bad channels are interpolated. What do you mean by interpolation? Interpolation is something like, where you have two values and between that you don't have a value. So what do? You use these two sample values to make sure you get a value in between these two samples. So that is called interpolation basically. But what do we do when, say, someone subject 1 channel 1 is bad and subject 2 channel 3 is bad? So if we start removing each of the bad channels of the subjects, there could be a scenario where only 20 channels are common across all the channels. So, and we are left with only 20 because each of the channel is bad in one or the other subject. Then we are left out with 20 subjects, which is not good. So what do we do is we interpolate the bad channels. So we detect the bad channels like we had explained in point 3, that is using PSD. And then what we do is we interpolate it using the adjacent electrodes. Say that one electrode is bad, so you take the values or the samples or the signals across the electrodes which are surrounding it and interpolate that particular channel to make sure that the number of channels across the subjects, whatever you are recording, remains same. So for example, you are recording 64 channels, so the same 64 channels are available for you across all the subjects what you have recorded. So that's why we interpolate the bad channels. Then referencing, what happens is common average referencing, as Dr. Ganesh was showing you that, our ANT neuro machine, what is being used there for recording is reference to FCZ, that is frontocentral mid electrode. But what happens is there is a difference in the signal values if you reference it differently. So what happens, say, assume that, meditation 1 says that there is an increase in something, and when I compare Raj Yoga meditation with this particular reference and say that, is it behaving the same way, I cannot do that because, the other meditation study would have referenced it to some other reference. So to come to a common platform and to compare the results, and also there is some significance to common average referencing, which I may not be able to tell in detail now, but the thing is to make sure that we are in a common platform saying that Raj Yoga meditation study is also common average reference, and this is what the change we are getting. Now we are in the same platform where the others are publishing or reporting their research. Now we know that comparison compared to this is what is happening in Raj Yoga meditation. So for that as well, we have to make sure that we have to get to a common referencing scheme that we call it as common averaging. This is what predominantly is used until and unless your hypothesis is that you are looking for a particular region. Say that you wanted to see the changes only in frontal lobe and your hypothesis is fixed that you wanted to see the changes in frontal lobe, then it's not required to common average the referencing. You may go ahead with whatever the referencing you have. It depends on the localization of your analysis as well. So if you are not deciding upon it, the best thing is to make sure common average referencing, because the noise profile also would get down. And these are the applications of EEG in general. I'm like, why people are interested in this modality of what do you say, signals, whatever we are recording from brain, why people are interested. The thing is, now we know that brain computer interface has been one of the industry which is coming up for multiple reasons. For example, autonomous navigation or digital or mechatronic devices. People with motor disorders, disabilities, activity impairment, we could actually develop computer interfaces using their brain waves, which is EEG. Because why again EEG? Because it is non-invasive and it is very relatively easy to acquire the signals, but of course challenging as well when you say that noise comes into picture. And then measuring attention, workload, things like that, people are coming up with BCIs. And there is something called biometric also, which is a big playing role, because they say that EEG also is very different to each of the individuals. And we ourselves had one of the work done, including the meditators data set and the other data sets of another openly available data sets. And we found that yes, EEG could be used as a biometric modality, but still a lot of challenges in it, because whenever you enroll a subject, the state of the brain is quite different, and when you are giving for testing, it would be different. So these challenges are already there. So, but definitely a field to study. The other custom solutions is like, we know that psychology fraternity constantly uses EEG for their state of brain. And these days, even sport, fitness, and meditation is what we are interested in. And it is very well known that meditation comes under this solutions, where people actually question us more, saying that what happens if I meditate? How do you prove it? Of course, the behavioral aspect is very well known, but still it's time for us to say that this is what exactly happens in the brain, whether it is structural or functional. That there are changes in the brain which would help you in do better with whatever the things you have been doing. And educational purposes also, there are AG where we say that at what point of breathing there is something like very link between the breathing phase and the learning component, which have been actually decoded using EEG. So these are the things. And of course, clinical applications are always there, where we wanted to know the brain functionality, and we wanted to know how different regions of the brain get connected in different scenarios. For example, clinical populations, we know that there is a decreased functional connectivity in Alzheimer's, decreased functional connectivity in Parkinson, and that's how it is used. Neurology for diagnosis purpose, and neurofeedback. Neurofeedback, these days it is well used, because as one of them had asked, like can I get delta waves when I meditate? So when I meditate, I should get into delta. As Dr. Kanish was rightly saying, you need not have to push yourself. It would get into different oscillations when you start meditating, but the biofeedback can be given. For example, you show that what is that alpha level or the theta level or the delta level of your brain, and you are more focused, and you are sort of getting that feedback to make sure that you are getting into that waves. Even that is possible these days. That is what we call it as neurofeedback. That means you have a feedback of your neural signatures to change it accordingly. So neuromarketing, yes, now people are investing more on this particular dimension, where people wanted to know what are their patterns of for example, how an ad is impacting them to go and look at the product and actually order it. So people are using this in this regard as well. So that is all about applications of EEG. Now before getting into our study, I would show you one of the data which we have recorded from Meditator, and how to read it. And whatever the data which we have recorded, it is similar in nature, because we have also recorded with the same machine there. That is the ANT neuro machine, which you have seen the demo today. So I will be considering one of the subject data to show you how does it look, how do we pre-process, and how does it look before pre-processing and after pre-processing. Okay. Is all good till here? Do you have any questions?
Any questions from any? Okay. Yes, Pradeep, we can continue.
Yeah. So is my window is showing MATLAB, Kanishk, or is it still showing the presentation?
It is showing the PPT only.
Okay, I'll change it here. Yeah.
Yes, MATLAB window.
Yeah. Okay.
For all the brothers and sisters, the MATLAB is very vast tools, which basically in form of a software we can utilize it for multi-purpose. For EEG data processing, we are using MATLAB. However, it is a paid software, but few of brothers who are very well versed with the Python or other languages, they can use Python also as an open source tool to pre-process the data and visualize and finally analyze the data. Okay, but here because we have done and already made a pipeline, so we will just show you how to do it using the MATLAB.
Yeah.
In the next workshops, we can even take the sessions with respect to Python or using any other languages.
Yes.
Yes, please continue.
Yes, thanks for that, Kanish. So yes, people can use Python as well because there are toolbox, predominantly many toolboxes available to read the data. But we have the MATLAB access, so we generally use MATLAB. And there are a lot of toolbox which are readily available to pre-process the EEG. So that's why we go to MATLAB. And one such toolbox which is very much used in EEG processing, analysis, and even the interpretation of results is the EEG lab. So how does that EEG lab look like is, I'll show you. Okay, this is how an EEG lab look like, where it's an add-on to the MATLAB, and you could import the data, different types of data which you could, because here the ANT neuro actually generates .cnt file. Even that could be read. Different machines or amplifiers is already here. So you can use different things here and accordingly read your data. Whatever the machine you are using, the amplifier you are using, you can use that particular extension and use the data. And you can also load existing data set, because the data set which is compatible to be read by EEG, that is the .set file, can be used directly from the EEG lab. So normally what we do is we read it from VHDR format, and then what we do is we load it, save it in .set format, so that becomes compatible to the EEG lab. So next time when we are reading it, it becomes easy. So that is the thing. Otherwise, not pretty much. Here tools, we have different tools. For example, you can actually change the sampling rate. That is one thing which you have to take care. So Kanish, what was the sampling rate which we used in the morning?
So morning we have recorded with 512 hertz data.
512 hertz. Okay.
And as you remember that frequency what we were recording in, it is 512. That means 512 samples we are recording for each and every second, right? Yes, Pradeep. Yeah, Pradeep, you can please continue.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. So it's always good to have a higher frequency sampling rate, so that you have more number of samples of the signal, but at the cost of trade-off of storage and computational capacity. More the data, you would take more space to store it and more time to compute, to any computation on it. So that you have to take care. Accordingly, you have to choose. But if the storage is not a problem, it's always better to acquire the signal at more sampling rate, say 512,000. And then for the computation purpose, you can always downsample it. That's what EEG lab also tells you here. That is here, if you could actually change the sample rate. So that means you could change the sample rate and the filter the data. That's what I was telling. Filtering is very obvious operation in EEG. So someone who wanted to work on EEG analysis, they should know some basics of filtering. That is, otherwise it would become difficult for them. So there are different multiple types of filters, and each one of them has its own advantages and disadvantages. So you have to be careful on that as well. What filter you are using, and as I was telling, the re-referencing the data, which I told you, there are different multiple methods of re-referencing. I think Dr. Kanishka has already dealt with it. And interpolating electrodes, which I was telling, to make sure that the same number of channels are present across all subjects. Then inspect or reject by eye, which I was telling, that after pre-processing you are supposed to visualize your data to make sure that not too much of noise is still present after pre-processing. And there is something called built-in things which we use, that is clean raw data and ASR. And that's what we have used. I'll tell you what does it do. Decompose data by ICA, that is independent component analysis. As I showed you, that there are multiple components of the signal, and then you get the decomposition of the signal to say that which are all components belongs to what, and accordingly you will take a decision whether to reject that particular component or not. Then extract epochs. Kanish had already told that for example, if you record for 1 minute of eyes open data, there is something called characteristics of the EEG, which is called non-stationary. Non-stationary means that the mean of the signal keeps varying every moment of time. So this moment is not definite. So what we do is, to make sure that the mean remains same for each of the duration, what we do is we take small portion of the signals, say 1 minute, we will divide it into 1 second segments. So how many does it have? So we have 60 seconds, 60 such epochs we will have. Hello? Yeah.
Yeah,
Hello?
Pradeep.
Yeah.
Pradeep.
So 60 epochs we have, and sorry.
No,
Hello?
please.
There is some sort of feedback. I don't know. I'm hearing some voice. Okay. So now what we do is, why do we do that? Because when we extract the measure for all these 60 seconds, assume that there is one epoch. This has different things. One is that many linear operations should follow non-stationarity. So that means you have to make sure that the signal what you are using is non-stationary in nature. So that is done. The second advantage is, assume that out of these 60 seconds, assume that in 1 of the second there is noise. So, and you have not noticed it, and it has come down to the pre-processed data as well, and you have the noise in it. Now what happens? When you take the complete segment, that particular segment shows up. But when you take epoch wise and calculate any measure and then take the average of it, because all other segments are fine and only one segment is bad, that gets nullified. So that's the advantage of that being epoching. But the concept of epoching is that to maintain the non-stationarity of the signal with the measure whatever you are extracting. For example, there are measures where the distribution is important. So in that case, as long as the data what you have, if you put it, the distribution would be better. The distribution would be actual distribution. So you take larger the data. So something like that. Then source localization, I think Dr. Kanish has a separate session on it where he would be doing it. Then ERP lab. ERP is something called event related potential. So now what we are doing in case of meditation studies is that you tell a meditator to come, sit and record the data for 5 minutes with eyes open. Over. Then record the data with eyes closed. Then you make the subject or the meditator to do meditation and record the data. That is something called continuous EEG analysis. But in the case of event-related potentials, there is some stimulus given to you. For example, an audio stimulus or a video stimuli or a tactile stimuli. So we check what is the change in the brain activity when you see that stimuli, when you listen to that stimuli. So that is called event-related potentials. So what you do is you show the stimuli for say 100 times, and then you average all these segments for 100 times, and then you will see that one particular component which is very much related to the stimuli what you are seeing or you are hearing, that is called event related potential. So that is another type of study, but predominantly what we do is continuous EEG analysis, because we don't give any stimulus during meditation. But of course, one of the studies again going on in the parallel lab on Raj Yoga meditation, where they have given some visual input as well. Okay. And in fact, Dr. Kanish is also part of that project. Okay. So now I have shown you EEG lab. Now, knowing that we know EEG lab, now let's read the data. So I'll read the data and see how the data looks. So now I'll read the data. You see, this is my recorded data. So the recorded data, what we recorded in the morning would be similar like this. I'm not sure, because I'm not sure about the noise levels, what we have recorded there, but it comes like this. But how many signals are you seeing here? Can someone tell me? How many signals are we seeing here?
There are three signals
Three
which they are.
signals. But there are these many, that is 61 channels, and only 3 signals are seen. That means the DC, that is the baseline of the channels itself, is changed. That is the DC offset which we always talk about. For example, if I go to settings, display, and remove DC offset. Okay, I just remove DC offset. Can you see here? You could see all the channels which we have recorded. But if I just remove that, do not remove DC offset, this is what it is. So that is why we always do high pass filtering. That means we remove that DC component, that is the shift which it has created to the channel recorded. So what we get is this. This is the actual recorded signal. Okay, this is how it looks like. So now if I keep moving, you can see the data is comparatively clean, but there are some here, there is some noise here, and then I keep moving. Seems to be okay, and see here, there is some sort of high frequency noise here, if you could see. And then there is an eye blink here, okay, which you could see here. This is affected with AF. EOG is also present in our data now, what we are looking. So comparatively, the data is okay. So we have seen very noisy data as well. So as an experimenter, your objective also have to be like as clean as possible. So see, there is some inevitable noise here. So this is at 76. And this is how you have to see the data. Once you record the data and you extract the data, you have to do this process to visually see how the data looks. So then you get some confidence that whether your algorithm does work, or you have to make sure that you have to change your parameters in your pre-processing algorithm as well, because there are a lot of parameters which we have to change even in pre-processing algorithm. So this is how it looks like. Now, the next thing is, as I told you, that now we have to see what are all the frequency components it has and how is it. Because we told, right, functionally, that is cognitively, each of the frequency band has its own significance. Say delta, there is some cognition inward, the theta, alpha, beta, goes so on. So now I have to check the PSD. How do I do that? I apply the Fourier transform and I get the PSD. See, this is how the data looks for me now with the recorded data. So this is the thing. So what is this? X-axis is the frequency, which we are actually looking till 100 hertz. And you know that 50 hertz, there is a line noise. Can you see here? Line noise is definitely there. It has got in. So that's how you will see the line noise here. Now what happens, this power is the strength of that particular oscillation. For 20 hertz, what is the power? For 50 hertz, what is the power? So any biosignal actually follows 1 by f curve. What do you mean by 1 by f is the strength or the power of the signal reduces as you increase the frequency. So what happens when some PSD is something like this? It is going completely flat. That means you know that it is not a biosignal, it is a noise. That's how, that is why PSD is used to detect any bad channel. Here, I think all channels seems to be okay because there is no outlier or any channel is not going very away from the cluster of the PSD curves. So that's how we do it. Now we will go to pre-processing the EEG. So how do we pre-process? I have used ASR, that is the clean raw data, which I showed you there. So let's clean the data. And these things you could actually get it more details online as well. So ASR is a artifact subspace reconstruction method where it learns the characteristics of the signal by checking out very specific clean EEG segments, and then it tries to correct the bad segments. So I'll start running it. Okay, we have around 1 minute. So if you have any question, you can just let me know.
Pradeep, you can continue till the time continue. So that's okay.
Yeah, because it takes around a minute for it to complete.
That's fine. You can please continue.
Yeah. So it is scanning for
Have any
bad
questions?
channels.
No. Coding. Okay. Pradeep,
Yeah.
any specific question you wanted to ask about coding?
Coding.
Acha. So, Pradeep, if you can explain maybe 1 or 2 lines about this coding, so they can understand where to basically provide the inputs. Obviously, it is a long code what we have put.
Yeah.
Few of the
Okay.
inputs, if you can tell, it will be easy for them to start.
Okay. See, for example, in the first cell, we say that what is the file name, and this is also very important when you save the data. I'm like, when you are doing a project, you have to make sure that how do you save the data is also very important. So that becomes very easy to read the data. So here what we have done is we have given the subject number, assuming that ours was like, say, not going more than 3 digits. So we kept 3 digits, first 3 digits as the subject ID. And then the next 3 letters is subject name. Okay, and moreover, this has to be blinded to the experimenter so that the experimenter who analyzes the data should not know which subject data he is analyzing. That bias should also be maintained, that there is no bias in experimenter knowing which data he is analyzing. And this is the date, that is 17th September 2021 is what we recorded the data. And EO1 is the eyes open baseline 1. That is the first eyes open baseline. And .vh star is the format of the data, that is the extension of the data which is extracted from the ANT Neuro machine, which you have seen today morning. And file path is we have to give the file where exactly it is saved. And then what happens, we are using this particular function called load EEG data. This is a function which, sorry, oh, it is still working, so it may not open. So this is a function which is like, it gives file name and path, and then you extract the EEG. If you see here, this is the EEG structure which you have recorded. So okay, just a minute, I'll just check out whether this is. I'll just run this and then I'll continue. See, load EEG data has this much. So we give the file name and file path, and we give the extensions because it can read different extensions. and then you read the data. If the data file is not there, it will give me an error saying that the file does not exist. Otherwise, it will check for all these three type of extensions, that is .set, .vhdr, and .cnt. So that's how we read the data. And then pop ggplot will give me that window. If you see that window which I reviewed the data, if I evaluate, this is what I get. So this window is the pop ggplot. Where I remove the DC offset, I'll get all the data. So in this, there are different things like, where here it is the time 0. If I go to 10th second, if I say 10, it goes to 10th second starting. So, and this is the amplitude. If I decrease it more, say 5, and say enter, it becomes more. So if I give it more, it becomes less. So you can observe this also. I am in the scale of 20 for raw data. That means signal to noise ratio is quite low. So it's in 20. Okay. Now that is the thing about that. Now let me see whether the ASR is completed. Okay. So ASR has completed pre-processing. Now let me plot the thing and see whether it is completed. Yes, it is completed. So now what I'll do is I'll take this to the right window and take this to the left window. Okay, let me take both of them to be 15. Okay, is it both of them the same? Okay, let me plot this. Yeah, this I'll take it to left, and I'll plot this now. Okay, this is the raw and this is the pre-processed data. If you see here, this is at 0 and this is at this thing. So okay, now if you see how is the pre-processed and the raw data which we have recorded. You see, there is so much of high frequency thing which is lost. Let's go to 31.5 here as well and see whether that particular component is removed and it is okay. See, it has reduced. If you see, it has reduced. Whatever the component we had here, now it has reduced here. So that is what the pre-processing does. If you see, let's go to that iBlink, whatever we had at 37. And see here, 37, it has corrected the iBlink. So that means that pre-processing is okay, working okay for us. Okay. So that is the pre-processing what we have done. Now next what we have to do is, now we have to see, let me close all this. Okay, and close this as well, close. Okay, now we have raw, now we have pre-processed, and we have the raw PSD as well. Now let me generate the PSD of the pre-processed data. How does it look like? Now you see the difference. Can you see the difference? So how exactly it looks like, how it was looking. So were you able to see any alpha that is 10 Hertz here? No, you were not able to see that. Now after pre-processing, you can see that there is a clear peak. So this is what a pre-processing does. So that is why we have to do the pre-processing, which is very important. Otherwise, this is what the status of the signal what we have recorded. So this is pre-processed EEG. So which is very much clear the what do you say, the peaks where all it is peaking. It's a nice beta peak we have during in a meditator during eyes open itself, which normally we don't see in any of the controls, in fact. So this is a meditator's data where we could see that there's a clear beta, alpha with eyes open. So controls normally have less alpha. That is, non-meditators have comparatively less alpha is what we have found out. So this is what it is. Now, compared to this, now what happens if there is one more representation of the EEG data, because we are recording from multiple electrodes. So here what happens, each of the color tells one of the electrode. But what we have to show is location wise, that is, localized to what activity. Now let's see what happens to this alpha activity locally. That is, you localize it and then see what is it. Before that, we will understand how do we localize it. There is something called the topo plot. In each of the paper, if you see, you will see this figure. Yeah, what does this figure say? It's a top view of your head. You are seeing from the top, and this is the top view. And you see these are the electrodes which we have put. For example, this is the ground electrode which is not present in our ANT cap. The morning what we recorded, this is not present because it is the ground electrode. Okay, the FCC is also not seen here because that was the reference. So because that was the reference and the ground electrode is not seen, the rest all electrodes are here. Okay. And the electrode M1 and M2 we have not plotted here because normally we don't take that for analysis. So M1, M2 is not there. So the rest of the electrodes which we wanted to analyze is here. So now if I plot the alpha power, which I showed here, for example, the one which I showed here, that is, I wanted to see the alpha power here. That is the mean of this band, that is 8 to 13 hertz. As a electrode wise, I wanted to see. How does that look like? Let's see. This is the left side is before pre-processing and the right side is after pre-processing. Okay, let me put that title for you so that it becomes easy.
Pradeep, also if you can show the heat map, it will be easy to explain.
Oh, what heat map? I'm not sure.
Heat map of the topo plots which you're plotting, the scale.
Oh, scale. Okay, I do. Roy ji, you wanted the color bar, right? Okay, I have put the color bar. Let us check what does it come. To just increase the font. Okay. Okay. Now you see the scale of the alpha power. The scale is different because here the scales are different. I'll close this now, and see here the scale what we have got is different. That is why the scale is seen here. But can you see any difference in the alpha? No, that alpha is really not localized. If you see here, the alpha has higher power compared to the frontal electrodes. These are the frontal electrodes, and these are the posterior electrodes. And we know that alpha is very dominant in the posterior region of the brain, that is the V1 area. So you can see here, it is a clear difference of whatever we are plotting here is what it is. So this is what we have plotted. So any paper which you see about EEG, they would have plotted power spectral density. How do we read it? It is with respect to frequency. What is the power value? How do we read the topo plots? Topo plots is each of the electrode, it is the location. When you see here, we know that which region has higher activity or higher power in our case. In our case, we have plotted power. So we can see that this is how it is. Okay. So any doubts here, Kanishk?
Yes. So just to explain it a bit more,
Yeah.
if the color bar, so color bar is indicating what is the volume or what is the power content in the topo plot. So you see, based on the color, it is showing more the negative power, less the amount of power. More the negative power, more the negative scale, less the
Power, correct.
amount of power. As you go to the more like brighten color, more the power is there. So if you compare from this area to this area, you see this has more power. That's what Pradeep was saying, that this area in the posterior area, we can see that this is more power. This area has very less power compared to this area. Okay.
So
Yes,
what
Pradeep.
I have plotted is the
Any
alpha
anyone
band
else
power.
have any questions?
Yeah.
No, you can continue, please.
Okay. Okay, this is about EO, that is eyes open. Now let's see what happens with eyes closed. I wanted to compare what happens with eyes closed. Alpha
Pradeep,
band power. Yeah.
just one question. Yes, please.
Yeah.
How How do we read the plots? Okay, so Pradeep, can you explain maybe one more time about the topo
How do we
plots?
read the topo plots? I mean, how do you understand or how do we code it?
Yeah, how do you understand them?
See, each of the electrode is here. If you see, this is the electrode. Is it visible, the labels?
Yes.
Okay, so this is what it is. So now if you see the raw EEG, each of the point has one value here because these are the each line here, okay, represents one channel. So that channel value in alpha band, that is in 8 to 13 hertz, we have taken the mean of each of the lines and you will get how many values? 61 such values. So 61 such values with 61 such electrodes, we are plotting that. We are plotting that particular value. For example, this is the value of AF4. Here, if you see AF4 is here and this is AF4, AF3. So this how you will read the power value. This is what it happens in raw EEG. But when it comes to pre-processed, the posterior electrode, say P7, P5, P3, P1, if you see this region is somewhat lighter here. What does lighter color mean? That means power is increasing, right? So the darker color is low power. So it has very low power compared to the posterior region of the brain. So each dot here in the topo plot is representing the respective electrode here, and you are plotting the respective value of that electrode in the topo plot. It is called topographic plot, basically. Yeah. So
Yeah.
did it
So
answer the question? Yeah.
You beautifully explained it. In extension to that, so if you what all 64 channels which we are recording here, these 64 channels, we are not having a direct connection with 64 because it is not that penetrating inside the brain and we are getting the same amount
Yes.
of current.
Yes.
It is spread all over the head. That's why you see this regions are there. You know, the regions have very similar colors. Somewhere it is different, somewhere it is some other color. So it is the spread all over. whatever we do in this topo plot, it's a primary estimation of that current density, which we record,
Correct.
right? That is what we can see, that's why the different colors are merging and then different areas are looking all together. So you might have, I mean, there is another extension which we can do in this, that each and every channel can have its own color. That's also another extension we can do. But this is, huh? Yes, there are multiple color scheme which we can select, but the color scheme also have, I mean, the similar kind of a scale you need to follow. In this color scheme, there's one kind of a scale that which goes from like black color to the yellow color, which has multiple other colors. Similarly, there could be another RGB scheme, there could be CMYK, or there could be multiple color coding are there. But ultimately, this is only for the visualization of that particular region. Also, when they look for, possibly Pradeep might be able to show you other colors also. This was a magma scheme. There are multiple other schemes also. So when you look for other colors, the similar kind of scale will be visible. So
For
it's
example,
for the
yeah.
representation. Now you can see this. It is much brighter. Now it is much more comprehensible, right? So, but the only thing is which I wanted to tell here is that see the estimation of all the power, the different area, different regions all over the head is not very, it's not very giving a very distinctive, understanding in the topo plots. Why? Because the recording which we are doing from all the record, let's say from this area, we have 5 electrodes. So these 5 electrodes are recording this, and this is the localized, not exactly very localized, it's a spread over the all over the scalp. This activity, electrical activity, which we are recording here, right? That's why you look that these are all spread all across the scope.
No, but to add on to it, we have sort of like sort of it just interpolates and makes a contour. For example, the value what you have between one electrode to the other electrode, what does it do is it just interpolates the region and then it becomes continuous. Otherwise, it is like sort of discontinuous. But as Kanish rightly said that it is a spread of the whatever the measure we are doing, we try to interpolate and say that this is what, for example, this electrode has effect of this much of region. So this electrodes together say that here it is sort of concentrated, and this has this much of regions. So if you see, the circumference actually overlaps, as he rightly said, it spreads over, and that's why you feel it is continuous. Yes.
Yes. Yes, please continue. What is the difference to be known after this detail? Yeah, so yeah, Pradeep will be explaining it. Just a moment. Pradeep, we are just give me a second. Some electrical interference. Just give me a moment. We are having a power interruption. So for online participants, also just please be there. Just connecting soon. So, brother has asked a very good question, which I want actually that somebody should ask, that whether you are forced to sit in this room, and I really wanted to understand whether all of you have come with the exciting, I mean, looking with that EEG is a very exciting thing. So learning is always good, but whether you will be applying this to your fields, maybe, or maybe you will be working for Seva. So, brother has asked this very beautiful question, that what is our expectation as organizer to provide, um, provide what kind of learning outcome could be there. So, what, in my understanding, there are two things. One is that, well, you will be adapted with the very basic understanding about the electroencephalography. Why do we use it? How do we use it? And in case if you will be required to collect the data at your centers, you will be able to do it in one or two training sessions with the help of somebody who is already known. Let's say if in your centers we have to record the data, so I can give the machine with one or two sessions, I can stay there, and then later on sessions you can record the data. That is one part. Second part, how do we interpret when obviously we record this data, and it's a very complex data. It's a very lot of things are there in this data. So when we record this data, when we analyze this data, in between we do the pre-processing, what Dr. Pradeep was talking about. It requires lot of other fields knowledge also. Let's say you require coding also, knowledge of MATLAB coding. You require a little bit of understanding of engineering concepts such as Fourier transformer, such as independent component analysis, ICA, PCA. Lot of other things are required. So that we can take in the other training program in detail. But here we just want you to understand, if you're reading a paper which has interpretations of EEG, which they have used the EEG as a technique, so how you can read the results and you can see that what kind of changes are happening in brain, whether be it meditation, be it due to neurofeedback, be it due to any other, even in the clinical cases, what all things are happening in the brain. So if you are coming across the IC, if you are coming across the power spectral density curve, which you have seen that some changes are happening, or if you see the topo plots, what would be your understanding? That is what is the initial thing, which, I mean, this is the secondary thing which we wanted you to learn about. That's why we are stressing upon for this particular session. Yeah, so only for 2 minutes we will have a break, and because of this electrical interference, power interference, we have to just wait for.
But I'm listening to you.
Oh, that's great. So
I'm
actually,
seeing.
the thing is, this projector is not visible, so all people will not be able to see.
Okay. Got it.
Just wait for two more minutes.
Yeah.
So that is sampling rate, obviously. So I showed you in the morning when we are recording the data. During recording of the data, we have to define the sampling rate. That's the one of the first step. Microsoft Excel. Microsoft Excel can, because this is a very huge data. So I'll tell you a dimension of this data. Let's say if we have 512 hertz of data, sampling rate of this data, which we are recording for 10 minutes. Suppose for 5 minutes we are recording. So try to understand the dimension. If you are familiar with the Excel sheet. So Excel has rows and the columns. So in the rows, it would be number of channels or number of electrodes. Let's say 64 electrodes we are connecting, but the data is coming from 61 electrodes. Actually, 60 electrodes. 2 channels we are letting go because of the ground and the reference channel, and 2 channels of M1, M2 we are reducing. So total 60 channels data we are recording. That means there are 60 rows from which we are recording the data. But how many columns would be there? Try to understand. If it is 512 hertz, then the number of columns would be 512 into 60 into number of minutes. So if you try to process this much amount of data in Excel actually got crash That's why we need high computation analysis software, and MATLAB is one of them, which that's why we are using that. So data can be seen, data can be visualized using Excel, but it will take a lot of time, and sometimes most of the time it got crash also. So that's why we require specialized software to use this. Yeah, Pradeep, in a minute we are setting up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Possibly within 2 months, we will again conduct this session, and then you can register for the hands-on training for EEG analysis, which will be in continuation of this. Yes, 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 that is there. So that database is there. So we will inform all of you who are participating with this in this workshop. Apart from that, we will also have a call, which would be online or LinkedIn, all possible manners. We will put it there. Baseline correction of? Yes, yes. Baseline correction is also a part of pre-processing. So when we record the data in recording, like after recording, because of different settings, baseline may get changed. Also, it is required for us to stabilize the data. So that's, yeah, obviously it's a part of pre-processing. Even before analysis, even before the visualization, we do this baseline correction. Yeah, Pradeep, it's visible. Now you can please continue. Sorry for the delay. Hello, Pradeep, am I audible? Everyone who have gone outside, please join in the room. We are starting. Yeah, Pradeep, you can please continue.
Yeah. So we were on this particular figure that this was generated only for EO, that is eyes open. Now let's check what happens in a meditator between eyes open and eyes closed. In the alpha band, because we had seen the alpha band. So okay. See, this is what it happens. If you see here, during alpha, that is eyes closed, the power is increased compared to the eyes closed in all ways, in all electrodes. So that means there is a clear increase in alpha when you close your eyes. So that's why when Dr. Kanishk was recording the data, he told, can you close your eyes, so that the alpha is very clearly seen in the data. If you see, it is the same scale. All of them, both of them have the same scale, that is -20 to 20. But which one is lighter? That is, this one is lighter. That means this has higher power than eyes open. So that is what is eyes open and eyes closed. Okay. Okay. So that's it. And we have also plotted the box plot, like say, see, it is like this. If you see the power in alpha band, this is one more figure which you will normally see in manuscripts, that is box plot or the bar plots. Here we have plotted box plot where this line will tell you the median, and the it's the 95 yeah, 75 percentile of the data onto the other side, either side of the data. So if you see clearly there is an increase from the eyes open condition to the eyes closed condition, that is clear increase in alpha. between two different conditions. So that's it. So we can also see that using the normalized PST. Let me see whether that will work.
Pradeep, one thing, if you
Okay.
can also define a little bit about the baseline correction. Why do we need to do it, and what is the process, and why it is important?
Baseline correction, yeah, that's a good thing. Good. If you see here, the baseline is this. I will stack it, okay? When I stack it also, it will not, do it. That means what happens is the baseline is that the signal has shifted from its zero mean, that is with respect to the zero voltage, positive and negative. There is an offset in the baseline itself. So what we do is we subtract. The best baseline correction is we subtract with the mean of the signal. So what happens? It comes down to the zero mean. So zero mean is where it comes down like this. Otherwise, the baseline, without baseline correction, this is what it is, if you see. So there is a drift of the signal from its baseline, and then it starts oscillating there. So what we wanted to find out the oscillation is it has to be between the baseline. So what happens is, for example, I don't know whether I can generate here. So does it answer the question, or you want me to generate any sine wave?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
You have any question? Okay. Yeah, Pradeep.
And also, if you see draw of offset and stack it, you see that where all you have that noise or the blinks. Can you see here? When you stack it after DC offset and you just visualize the data, you see here there is a noise here. See here, there is a noise. This will be taken care by the algorithm because these signals are really sort of over, over the threshold of the actual range of the EEG signal. So this segment will be considered as bad. For example, here. But whereas when it comes to the pre-processed data, let's see how does it have stack it. You need not have to do display here. See, remove DC offset is not at all required because the DC offset is removed. I didn't use remove DC because that doesn't change much. See, that is taken care with the pre-processing algorithm. Now, if you stack it and see, you don't see that much noise what you were seeing in the this data, that is raw data. So say 63. Let me go at 63. See, this is the equivalent of the pre-processed and processed. Can you see? It is not there. That is what it is. Okay.
Great. So we would like to thank you, Dr. Pradeep.
Yeah. I would also, before I conclude, I would also thank Kanesh because, for giving me this opportunity. But I should also thank Adarsh, who has been sort of with very less time, we could code this and, we get this output. Whatever the visualization you are seeing, it's the effort of Mr. Adarsh. I should thank him. In fact, he is sort of a behind the screen presenter here, in fact.
Is Adarsh online?
Fair to say. I don't know he's online. I'm not sure. Adarsh, are you online? I don't know. Adarsh is online. I don't know whether he wanted to speak. Adarsh has to unmute. Can I do that? Yeah, I have asked him.
Can you unmute Adarsh? Just a moment. We are giving him the rights from Zoom.
Okay. So it's we three, most of the work we have done on Raj Yoga meditators data, that is Kanish, Adarsh and myself. I'm like, we have worked sort of lot of data on Raj Yoga meditation, and I have to be thankful for all the BKs who have been very cooperative. And in fact, I think this is the right platform for me to even thank for the amplifier. In fact, I don't know whether all of them knows it that the amplifier what we used was at IAC. So recently, after my completion of PhD, I'm like, it has come there, and I've been very thankful for the BK organization in this regard. So Adarsh, I don't know whether he is.
Adarsh, can I have your voice? So we would like to thank Dr. Pradeep and Mr.
Yeah.
Arda, who were my colleagues also, time of my stay
Thanks,
at I.
Ganesh.
And they're two very beautiful souls. They have contributed a lot in research on meditation. We have set up our lab. We have set up the room from scratch when it was like full of spiders' webs. And we have cleaned the room. We have set up the lab. We recorded the data for the whole 2-3 years there. And then we are still publishing papers on that, trying to understand what all things are there associated with the Brahma Kumari's Raj Yoga meditation. So I would like to please applause for Dr. Pradeep and Mr.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you, Dr. Pradeep and Adarsh for giving a very good time for this workshop. And we are really thankful for you to provide insights about EEG pre-processing and the very basic visualization, what we can do using the topo plots and the power spectral density. So thank you so much. And
Yeah.
we are for a break, for a tea break, maybe for 15 minutes. By 3:30, we will again assemble in this hall,
Yeah.
proceeding for next.
Okay. So if someone has any doubts, they can write to me to this mail ID.
Yes, they can
I
please,
would be happy.
they can note down anything related to programming, anything related to this pre-processing. You can redirect to Professor Dr. Pradeep.
Yeah. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Ganesh. Bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Pradeep. Thank you,
Yeah.
Adarsh.
Bye.
For online participants, please be there for some more time. We will come back in 15 minutes. We are starting the session in 1 minute. Please assemble in the hall. Please assemble in the hall. We are starting the session.
झरनों से संगीत है झरता, झरनों से संगीत है झरता, पत्थर के टकरा तूफान भी तोहफा बन जाता, तुमको मीत बनाने से प्रभु, तुमको मीत बनाने से। झरनों से संगीत है झरता, पत्थर के टकराने से तूफान भी तोहफा बन जाता, तुमको मीत बनाने से प्रभु, तुमको मीत बनाने से। सागर रास्ता दे देता, पर्वत भी झुक जाता है। सागर रास्ता दे देता, पर्वत भी झुक जाता है। नामुमकिन मुमकिन हो जाता, वक्त भी रुक जाता है। हम जाने या तुम जानो, हम जाने या तुम जानो क्या मिलता प्रीत लगाने से, तूफान भी तोहफा बन जाता तुमको मीत बनाने से, प्रभु को मीत बनाने से।
So, you assembled for this last session. I planned actually to give a brief about source localization technique, but I'm thinking that source localization technique, even without understanding of the basic of the other principles, without this, would be more theory based, right? So instead of that, we would like to understand when we do, because most of the people are from Brahma Kumaris, so we'll try to understand how we can do experiment on Raj Yoga meditation, what all things people have utilized to understand effect of meditation. तो मेडिटेशन एक बहुत अच्छी टेक्निक, अच्छी और बुरी भी नहीं, बट मेडिटेशन एक बहुत नॉवल टेक्निक है। और सबसे इंटरेस्टिंग ये है फॉर न्यूरो साइंटिस्ट दैट व्हेन यू डू मेडिटेट यू आर नॉट प्रोवाइडिंग एनी काइंड ऑफ intervention to your brain in terms of you are putting any extra machinery or you're connecting any signals or you're stimulating any in your brain using any signals, right? But still the mind gets changed when you are sitting quietly in a relaxed position and then you contemplate over something, you focus on something. So there are multiple kind of meditation which people do across the globe. Raj Yoga meditation is one of them. And the very interesting thing about Raj Yoga is that people do it with the eyes open. Usually, in most of the meditation, they do it with the eyes closed, right? So, the basic thing about meditation is that you know uh, this this computer is telling its counterpart that you have to relax, empty your cache, and clear your history. Right. So when you say we empty your cache, so you remember, or if we are living in BK lifestyle, so 6 times, minimum 6 times, or I would say, I think maximum 6 times or minimum 1 or 2 times, we are trying to, accommodate ourselves according to the traffic control. So traffic control is one technique which we are using. One of our brother who is currently working in one of the very reputed institute where meditation research is going on in USA, Dr. Ajay Nair. He has done work on just a minute meditation. We called this traffic control as just a minute meditation. So 1 minute meditation, what all changes are happening in brain, he has summarized in that. So this is about empty your cache memory. So in your laptops, in your phones, there's some cache memory is there. It is more like when you have a lot of thoughts in your brain. So there's some time you have to stop themselves. You have to pause yourself and recollect all of your strength, and then continue working together. So you can increase your focus, increase your stability, increase your cognitive control, and all these things. So these are the different techniques people have worked on meditation, and mantra meditation is one thing. Mindfulness and related types, which is a very Buddhist technique. And then Patanjali's yoga, multiple techniques in that, Hatha yoga, or there are multiple process where we call even Dhyan, Dharana, Samadhi. Different stages are there for Patanjali Yoga Sutra. People have tried to understand. Then Qigong or Tai Chi is another meditation technique, which where they use a very different kind of methods to meditate. So, moreover, when we try to classify meditation techniques, we can classify them in these two forms. One is concentrative, another is insight, or you can say non-judgmental awareness. So, concentrative is more related where you focus on something. It could be any object, it could be your body rhythms, any breath or sensations, what is happening in the body. Or you can simply just look at one point of light. So, sometime when we start meditating in Raj Yoga meditation, we focus on the point of light, right? There also behind this projector screen, you see that there's a point of light which is visible, and we look at this and then we start our meditation, right? Also, we can classify meditations based on the mechanism of action. How does meditation bringing change in your brain functioning? So, attention regulation is one thing where um, when you do meditate, your attention gets regulated. When I say regulate, why I'm not using the word control. Instead of using control, I'm using the word regulation. So, when you have a regulator, it is easy for you to understand when you have to switch on, how much you have to switch on, and where you have to switch off, right? So you can regulate. It's like a regulator. एक switch होता है, light on off करने के लिए एक switch होता है. You can turn it off, you can turn it on. But fan, we have multiple steps, multi-step एक regulator होता है, right? So that is what is kind of change which meditation practice can bring to your body and the brain. Body awareness is another kind of meditation where you become aware about your body. You do the body scanning. Even in Raj Yoga also, at the initial stage, we do the body scanning. We try to relax our body because muscle tone are very important factor when we are relaxing our body. So we try to minimize the muscle tone. Even in Vipassana and a few other meditation, we try to do the body scanning, and this body scanning helps us to become more aware about the body parts, and then we can relax them. Third is emotion regulation, where we do regulate our emotions, and it's not just emotion regulation is, or maybe it's not just a technique of meditation, but in most of the meditation we try to regulate the emotion. Even in few of the scientists who started working on meditation, research on meditation, they look for that emotion regulation is one of the very good outcome which they have found in meditators. So when I say emotion regulation, again, it is the same thing. So this question comes that people who do meditate, don't they get angry at any moment? So in my perception, in my understanding, it's that they get angry, but they know that how they have to respond to that situation. So they get aware about the situation, and because of their awareness, they get where they have to channelize their emotions, right? So that's why I call that emotion regulation is one of the outcome of meditation. Also, self-perception. When you perceive yourself, you connect from yourself to a supreme God or a supreme entity, or even do not connect, but you perceive about your qualities. You take a positive or neutral images about yourself. So this could be another kind of meditation techniques which people have used. These are the three major scientists. Right now, meditation research is a very big domain itself, where a lot of people are working in India itself. There are but more than 10 or 15 people who are working with meditation. They are recording EEG of different meditation style, and then trying to understand what is happening during meditation. They're trying to understand what is the functional characteristic of meditating brain, what is the anatomy of meditating brain, and what could be the network analysis they can look in a meditating brain. So when I say network, it is there are multiple regions of the brain which are connected together and working in synchrony to perform any function. So when we try to correlate the result, because most of you have asked the question that how to actually correlate this result. We got the topo plots, we got the power spectral density, but how do we see that what actually is happening? So in the later stages, later slides, we will see that. These are three major scientists. Richard Davidson, he is the pioneer in meditation research. He started his meditation research in around 80s and published a lot of paper. And he is in very close connect with Dalai Lama. And he is the person who is started meditation. He's the person who started doing research on mindfulness meditation. John Kabat-Zinn has a very interesting contribution in meditation research, that he has provided एप्लीकेशन मॉड्यूल्स ऑफ माइंडफुलनेस. तो माइंडफुलनेस को अप्लाई करते हुए आप अलग अलग डोमेन में कैसे यूज कर सकते हैं. लाइक दिस वन डोमेन विच ही हैज डेवलप्ड इज माइंडफुलनेस बेस्ड स्ट्रेस रिडक्शन, MBSR टेक्निक. And this MBSR technique is very beautiful technique where they when you apply this, the stress reduction of different individuals, let's say people who are caregivers of cancer patients, right? Because when you go into the cancer ward, you see the kind of suffering, and because of that suffering, if you stay there for a longer time, it affects your emotions, your physiological system itself. So how you're getting cope up with that, also this MBSR technique is very helpful. Amishi P. Jha is another prominent scientist who established meditation training for US defense. And uh, this multiple defense services, they have to go and they have to work in extreme environment. If you take the example of India, in India, our soldiers are deployed in extreme environment, which is ranging from -50 to +50. So when I'm saying -50, it's just Siachen. And when I'm talking about the +50, they are in the Thar desert area. They are also, right? So when you are staying in very extreme environment, your brain also gets affected by this. आप जब हाई एल्टीट्यूड एनवायरमेंट्स पे रहते हैं तो ऑक्सीजन डिप्लेशन होता है. ऑक्सीजन डिप्लेशन होगा तो ब्रेन को ऑक्सीजन कम पहुंचेगी, तो इसके काम करने की क्षमता, काम करने की शक्ति जो है वो कम होती जाएगी. yesterday we read more about that. More oxygen is required for humans to stay human, right? Obviously humans will not go. अभी तक ऐसा कोई रिसर्च नहीं है, अभी ऐसा कोई postulation नहीं that human, if they will start eating raw food, will again become chimpanzee. But the thing is, why I have highlighted that research here is that when you go to the high altitude areas, oxygen depletion is very high, and there if you have to maintain your calm, if you have to maintain your cognitive abilities such as attention, memory, or different attention types, decision making, you have to be very contemplative. You have to practice meditation, right? So Amishi P. Jha has given those kind of training modules, and because of her efforts, her research, she's basically a psychologist, experimental psychologist, but because of her physiological research, it has been able, US Defense Forces have provided meditation as a compulsory module for the training of their cohorts. I'm again repeating, and there's a compulsory training module, right? In India, we are yet to do that. We have not included meditation as a compulsory part for our training of the cohorts of whether they are going to Army, military, or Air Force, right? Navy or Air Force. Now, try to understand, while we are trying to understand the brain function, this is very important. This will give you the answer of the questions related to that. अभी तक हम जो चीजें हम कर रहे हैं, जो all kind of exploration what we are doing, how these exploration, how these experimental techniques are helpful to understand the brain function. So to complete a task, brain can use higher number of resources to reduce task completion. अभी इस तरह से समझे, in the early stages we used to calculate that एक काम को करने में अगर एक मजदूर एक दिन लेता है तो उस काम को करने में 4 मजदूर कितने दिन लेंगे. It's a simple calculation that they will take 1/4 of the day, less the time if more number of resources are being used, right? But एक और चीज है, अगर एक काम को करने के लिए एक मजदूर को दिहाड़ी 200 रुपए देते हैं तो 4 मजदूरों के लिए वो दिहाड़ी 800 रुपए हो जाती है, right? So try to understand in the perspective of resources what brain has. More number of neurons will be there to complete a task. More energy consumption also will be there. Okay. There could be another method which brain can use, which is a less number of resources which can act to maximize the output function. पर ये होता कैसे? So our brain, whenever we learn anything, right, in process of doing, when you practice anything, there is a need which for the very initial time, जब हम पहली बार कोई task करते हैं, so let's say पहली बार task करने में there are 2-3 brain regions, including the total number of neurons could be, let's say 2000 number of neurons which are doing that task. If you practice it for multiple times, the number of neurons which are engaged to do the task gets reduced, है ना? तो इससे क्या होता है, ब्रेन ऑटोमेटिक मोड में जाता है. That's what we learned. हम चलना शुरू करते हैं रोज, जैसे जैसे हम बड़े होते हैं, हमने चलना शुरू किया, our neurons gets like generated, neurons multiply करते हैं, connections develop करते हैं, connections develop करके वो grow करते हैं, अपने connections को और increase करते हैं, है ना? But after a certain time, when you need to do, I mean, let's say if you are learning how to ride a bicycle या two wheeler पे balance कैसे करना है, you can do it for throughout your life after you have learned, right? And less number of your neurons will be required for that. इसका basic example ये भी ले सकते हैं कि when you when you practice doing bicycle, or when you practice coding, or when you get adapt to do any mathematical equations, mathematics solve करते हैं, physics solve करते हैं, so जितना ज्यादा practice करते हैं उतना कम time आपको लगता है. And why it is there? Because ultimately brain resources कम utilize होते हैं उसमें, right? So this is how a brain, like how a human brain can gets adapted to adapted to completing a task from higher number of neurons to getting relatively lower number of neurons, right? So constant activation in areas related to a particular function can create networks. अब क्या होता है? Now when you've seen that अलग अलग topo plots में आपने देखा कि posterior region में अल्फा हाई है, या ड्यूरिंग मेडिटेशन देयर आर मल्टीपल रीजंस जहां पे ब्रेन एक्टिवेशन होता है. सो व्हेन यू प्रैक्टिस मेडिटेशन अगेन एंड अगेन यू आर एक्टिवेटिंग दोज रीजंस. अब neuroscientist has also done few other researches even without meditation, that when you do any kind of task related to attention, let's say, so during that attention some certain part of the brain regions get activated, and when I write this can create network, so there are multiple networks which gets created. So multiple networks means multiple areas which are connecting together, and when you see the data of this EEG recorded, you see that all these areas, all these different areas are in sync, or we can say are in similar phase. Phase is something, it is it is not FSE, it PHASE जो एक, हाँ. So mathematical equations में जब वेव फॉर्म्स को पढ़ते हैं तो वेव का एक फेज होता है ना. So उस फेज में वो एक सेम फेज में है. उस फेज में अगर वो रहते हैं, दैट मीन्स वो एक मोमेंट पे वो अलग अलग ब्रेन एरियाज एक्टिवेट हो रहे हैं. दैट मीन्स दे आर कनेक्टेड टुगेदर टू परफॉर्म अ फंक्शन, राइट? Next is if the similar kind of constant activations are happening, they will create these networks more stronger. It's like more like अगर हमको यहाँ से आगरा जाना है, या यहाँ से हमको मुंबई जाना है, so there are multiple highways, right? More the traffic will be increased, multiple more highways will be there. जितने ज्यादा highways होंगे, जितने ज्यादा चौड़े lanes होंगे, more traffic can be combined in that. So more traffic means more information. More information processing can be done in those networks. So it's like brain creates pathways or networks in order to perform any specific function. और जितना ज्यादा वो उसका प्रैक्टिस होगा उतने ज्यादा रोबस्ट पाथवेज बनने शुरू होते हैं. रोबस्ट पाथवेज बनने का मतलब है मोर इंफॉर्मेशन प्रोसेसिंग कैन बी डन, राइट? सो इट्स लाइक कि अगर आपको एक रेलवे ट्रैक से आपको 100 नंबर ऑफ रेलवे वैगन्स, आपको मालगाड़ी के डब्बे आपको गुजारने हैं, सो इट विल टेक, यू कैन इमेजिन द टाइम हाउ मच इट विल टेक फॉर 100 number of wagons. Now imagine that you have multiple railways, I mean multiple tracks, 5 tracks आपके पास हैं, and so you can take 20 number of this wagons and pass on in parallel, right? So brain में भी इस तरह से कुछ हो रहा है. I'm trying to tell you in a very layman form कि ये 5 tracks अगर बन जाते हैं तो the information can be distributed and can be passed on along, or it will take a less number of seconds or less amount of time to actually perform that particular function. Also, what happens that when these networks get stronger, it creates anatomical changes also at microstructural level. So this was one part of my PhD study which I have done using the DTI technique. DTI technique क्या होता है वो भी शायद आगे की स्लाइड्स में, then it will be easier. So meditation acts in training your brain circuits. तो ये brain circuits को बार बार whenever you are doing meditation, so कुछ specific areas है brain के जो कि cognitive abilities को support करते हैं, और when you are doing decision making, when you are doing any kind of planning, when you are doing when you are focusing on to a task, or when you are your working memory component is getting activated, during that moment meditation is activating those regions. So try to understand here. In meditation, what you're doing, you're sitting quietly, you're not doing any kind of task with your hands or with your legs or anything. Let's say if you are driving, you are focusing constantly on the screen and your hand-eye coordination has to be there. Even if you are playing, your hand-eye coordination and your decision making should be faster. So similarly, meditation is very interesting. Why neuroscientists are moving towards working for meditation and exploring meditation? Because meditation is something where you are not doing anything physically. It's just contemplation which you are doing, and somehow it is creating magic. Like in layman, we can say magic, but ultimately, what is happening is this: that constant activation of those regions are making them more robustly connected to the other regions. समझ पा रहे हैं? Right? Is it clear? Circuitry is developing and circuitry is getting more and more robust. So that is what is happening. How does it bring a change? So that's a very basic understanding that in through meditation you change yourself, and when you bring a change in yourself, you can change in interpersonal relationship, harmony develop होती है, emotion management आपको करना आता है, right? Then the society will get empowered because a lot of people learn meditation, and then finally you can reach up to a happy and a blissful world. So in the previous studies of meditation, people have seen results in the rehabilitation domain where children, young adults, middle-aged population, or geriatric population, that means the old age population, were suffering from some disorder. And people have seen that in developmental disorder, intellectual and learning disorders, for special kids की एक बहन बात कर रही थी, तो स्पेशल किड्स के लिए भी ये थेरेपीज, मेडिटेशन एज ए थेरेपी बहुत अच्छे से काम करती है, किया हुआ है. There are multiple challenges also when we have to tell them to meditate. तो how to get them motivated, उनको इंस्ट्रक्शन भी कैसे देना है, वो भी एक बड़ा चैलेंज होता है. बट अगर हम कर पाते हैं तो उसके रिजल्ट बहुत अच्छे हो सकते हैं, ऐसा प्रीवियस स्टडीज ने डेमोन्स्ट्रेट किया है. फॉर यंग एडल्ट्स, stress, addiction, or suicide prevention because of occupation. So occupation stress has been seen reduced by meditation. Even with the very basic relaxation techniques also, stress gets reduced. So meditation, it's altogether at a different level. Similarly, in the middle age, the occupational stress and the performance enhancement is improved. Depression and sleep quality, what people have, which is a very important factor for geriatric population, because of like old age, the sleep quality is very like they are prone to sleep disturbances. Their sleep quality is not very good. So meditation has actually improved the sleep quality. In the previous literature, we have seen this. Effects, multiple effects people have found on psychological health, chronic illness due to cancer, or even neurobiological indicators, which includes immunological factors और endocrine के आपका हार्मोन रेगुलेशन जो है मेडिटेशन से वो भी इम्प्रूव हुआ है, ऐसा प्रीवियस स्टडीज में देखा गया है. Then we see the EEG and the brain area activation. This is one of the study which we also do. Neuropsychological findings में people have seen that when somebody is doing a meditation intervention, somebody who is undergone the meditation intervention, their attentional capabilities have increased, working memory capacity has increased, cognitive flexibility has increased, and increased awareness about self, which we call as meta awareness, better decision making, able to handle high workload, able to disengage attention from negative stimuli. So these are the few of the findings which people have done while they have explored the meditation intervention. Functional changes जो brain में which we measure using using fMRI, जिसमें हमने देखा कि बहुत सारे अलग अलग एरियाज हैं. दिस इज वन अगेन आई एम ट्राइंग टू कोरिलेट विद जब मेडिटेशन में जब आप देखते हैं कि सपोज प्रीफ्रंटल कॉर्टेक्स एक एरिया है ब्रेन का विच इज अ वेरी which is the anterior area. ये एरिया जो आप देख पा रहे हैं, ये पर्टिकुलर एरिया, this particular area getting activated whenever you are doing meditation. So what it does, it basically is responsible for attention, switching, cognitive processes और execution. क्विक डिसीजन मेकिंग के लिए आपका फ्रंटल एरिया रिस्पॉन्सिबल होता है. तो सिंपली अगर आप कोई भी एरिया अगर रिस्पॉन्सिबल है किसी काम के लिए, अगर वो बार बार एक्टिवेट हो रहा है तो वो एक्सरसाइज कर रहा है, राइट? दैट्स व्हाई वी डू इट. Whenever you have to get become perfectionist, you need to practice it. So your brain area is getting activated again and again to become in order to become perfect or more robustly activated, it is happening. Anterior or mid-cingulate area, which is more related to the attention, emotion regulation, or performance monitoring, whenever you are performing any task. So how your brain is perceiving that as a task and then regulating your cognitive or mental or brain resources, right? Yeah. Activation is, when I say activation, that means whenever you're meditating, this particular area with respect to fMRI, when say ये बहुत सारे changes हम fMRI में देख पाते हैं. fMRI is a technique of MR like imaging, जिसमें हम देखते हैं कि whenever any area is getting activated, that means it requires lot of blood supply there, right? So because आप अच्छा एक try to understand in a way, हम body से इसको relate करने की कोशिश करते हैं. So when you run or when you have eaten food, अभी अचानक से आपने खाना खाया हो, खाना खाने के just बाद if you are running, so what will happen? Why it is not suggested? It is said that after having food you should not run. So what is happening when you are after taking the food, when you are running, just after taking the food, the blood vessels towards the gut are more activated, right? So lot of blood supply is required because that particular region of the body requires lot of oxygen, lot of glucose to actually consume or to assimilate, to digest the food. If in that moment, if you will run, what will happen? कि अचानक से heart or brain will signal to the legs कि you are running. So when you need to run, so all the blood supply will go to your limbs. पैरों में चला जाएगा. And quickly you realize कि after some time, 1 या 1.5 मिनट के बाद ही, you will feel stomach ache, right? So why it is happening? Because that time blood vessels are more active, blood supply is high during that digestion process in the gut. Similarly, now you take this case of body to the brain, analogy of body to the brain. In brain, multiple areas are there which are doing any kind of function. Let's say when I say cognitive processes, when I say attention and emotional regulation. So when ये कोई भी task हो रहा है, ये कब हो रहा है? जब आप किसी task में involved हैं. But in meditation, these areas are automatically getting activated even when you are not engaged in that task, right? Can you speak a little loud? So there are 3 type of exploration which people have done on meditation. Before meditation, during meditation, and post meditation. Or post meditation भी, it could be acute changes or it could be chronic changes. जो chronic changes हैं उनको हम देखते हैं in terms of, उनको हम बोलते हैं state related changes. Sorry, trait related changes. Trait related changes क्या होते हैं? That when you do meditate for a longer time, so you became like something. I mean, your brain has adapted and it already has done some anatomical or physiological changes. So after that, after practicing for 30 days or let's say for 90 days or let's say for a year, for a certain duration, आपके brain में वो processes develop हो गए. And whenever you do meditate, just after meditation, even if you do not meditate, few areas will be activated or few areas will be deactivated, right? स्टेट चेंजेस जो हम मेजर करते हैं वो हम ड्यूरिंग मेडिटेशन स्टेट देखते हैं. सो व्हेन यू आर प्रैक्टिसिंग मेडिटेशन, उस समय पे ब्रेन में किस तरह के चेंजेस हो रहे हैं उनको देखने के लिए हम देखते हैं, तो उनको हम स्टेट चेंजेस बोलते हैं, राइट? सो ब्रेन में मेडिटेशन करने के बाद, मेडिटेशन करते समय देयर आर मल्टीपल काइंड ऑफ चेंजेस व्हिच हैपेंस, and there are a lot of studies which have been published in the past 30 34 years 35 30, 40 years altogether. तो ये उन सारी स्टडीज का एक तरह से एक रिव्यू है जो मैंने यहाँ पे प्रेजेंट किया है. देन फंक्शनल एक्टिवेशन भी होता है, फंक्शनल डीएक्टिवेशन भी होता है. नाउ व्हेन आई एम सेइंग फंक्शनल डीएक्टिवेशन, सो व्हाई दिस इज इंपॉर्टेंट? बिकॉज लेट्स से वन एरिया व्हिच इज कॉल्ड एज पोस्टीरियर सिंगुलेट कॉर्टेक्स, which is one of the region जो कि किसी एक डिफॉल्ट नेटवर्क में इन्वॉल्व है, which is responsible for mind wandering. तो आप कहते हैं ना कि number of thoughts are there when we close our eyes, हमारा मन कहीं और चला जाता है, भाग जाता है. So what is this process called? Mind wandering. There are multiple thoughts which come in your mind. So this mind wandering process के लिए जो region responsible होता है, when you meditate for a longer time, this particular region gets deactivated. That means even when you are practicing meditation or not, after a certain period of meditation practice, this area function is getting deactivated. So it will be actually good, na? See, when you are not doing anything and your brain is consuming oxygen, so after a certain period of time, you feel exhausted, right? It's like when you're driving and because when you're driving, you're not doing any physical activity, but still your brain requires a lot of oxygen because it needs to focus on some place. So unnecessary, बहुत सारा energy consume हो रहा है. So that's why meditation is also called as energy efficient technique, right? People are also working in one of my study with fMRI. I have also seen that this posterior cingulate cortex is getting deactivated in people who have practiced meditation for more than 10 years. Right? Similarly, there are other areas जहाँ पे bodily sensation, processing of language and sound and spontaneous thought process जो रहता है, ऐसे areas भी deactivated पाए गए हैं. But this is not subjective. This is not a very generalized statement. अपने अपने research में सब लोगों ने अलग अलग तरह के research देखे, results देखे हैं, which I have compiled together. So हाउ डू वी स्टडी द स्ट्रक्चरल प्रॉपर्टी? अभी हमने बोला कि फंक्शनली तो ये चेंजेस होते हैं. अब स्ट्रक्चरल चेंजेस को देखने के लिए हम क्या देखते हैं? वॉल्यूमेट्रिक एनालिसिस एक चीज होता है जिसमें हम देखते हैं कि एक पर्टिकुलर आरओआई, रीजन ऑफ इंटरेस्ट ब्रेन का, जिसपे हम फोकस करते हैं, उसका वॉल्यूम कितना बड़ा है. व्हेन वी से कि वॉल्यूम बड़ा है, दैट मींस number of cells, number of neurons can be increased, right? Usually it is very hard. जिस टर्म को हम बोलते हैं adult neurogenesis. So adult neurogenesis is a very complex thing and it's a very uncommon phenomena, right? But in meditators, we have seen that gray matters have increased even after the span of 8 hours of meditation practice. Just 8 hours. Can you imagine? ये भी बहुत highly significant paper studies हैं, ऐसे research studies हैं जो कि publish हुए हैं. थिकनेस इज अनदर थिंग. एक एरिया का जो थिकनेस है, ब्रेन का जो कॉर्टिकल रीजन है, उसका थिकनेस है, वो थोड़ा इंक्रीज हुआ है. और फंक्शनल एनाइसोट्रोपी इज मोर लाइक कि जो व्हाइट मैटर फाइबर्स हैं, द रोडवेज, जो मैं बार बार बोल रहा हूँ, नंबर ऑफ ट्रैक्स, नंबर ऑफ रोडवेज, उनका थिकनेस इंक्रीज हुआ है, या उनका एनशीथिंग, उनका इंसुलेशन जो है वो इंक्रीज हुआ है. अगर उनका इंसुलेशन इंक्रीज होता है तो इसका मतलब क्या कि उनका जो इंफॉर्मेशन ट्रांसफर है उसका स्पीड भी अच्छा है और उसका लॉस ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन भी कम हुआ है, राइट? ये भी हम देखते हैं. डिफ्यूजिविटी इज अगेन द सेम थिंग, नंबर ऑफ आयंस व्हिच आर डिफ्यूजिंग आउट ऑफ द न्यूरोनल प्रोसेसेस, एक्सोनल प्रोसेसेस आर कुड बी लेस इन टर्म्स ऑफ, अगर हम देखना चाहें कि एनर्जी लॉस कम हो रहा है या फिर इंफॉर्मेशन लॉस कम हो रहा है. गायरिफिकेशन कुड बी अनदर थिंग, जिसमें जो फोल्डिंग है, इवोल्यूशनरी स्टडीज जो हम करते हैं, जो कई लोग करते हैं कि ब्रेन मंकी से ह्यूमन तक डेवलप होने में देयर आर मल्टीपल फोल्ड्स इन द ब्रेन. हमने जो इनिशियल स्लाइड्स में कल के सेशन में देखा था कि ह्यूमन ब्रेन में बहुत सारे फोल्ड्स रहते हैं, अखरोट जैसा स्ट्रक्चर जो होता है, तो इसको बोलते हैं गायरिफिकेशन. देयर आर मल्टीपल फोल्ड्स आर देयर. सो जो नंबर ऑफ गायराइज होते हैं, वो गायरिफिकेशन इंक्रीज करता है. अगर ऐसा इंक्रीज करता है तो दैट इज ऑल्सो वन पार्ट विच वी स्टडी, नॉट specifically for meditation, but any kind of neuroscientific study, specifically by evolutionary scientists, right? तो उसका proposed significance क्या होता है? Larger volumetric measure, that means larger structural size. Greater thickness could be greater number of neurons or glia fibers in a given region. If greater functional anisotropy, it would be greater fiber density. Lower axial and radial diffusivity would be greater axonal integrity and myelination respectively, and higher index of gyrification would be greater cortical surface area per unit volume. Ultimately, it is again, this gyrification is another measure for the thickness, right, and the volumetric. So with the help of using all these previous techniques, people have done study and they found that gray matter volume also gets increase in meditators, right? So it's a very interesting phenomena that usually gray matter, that means the cell neurons highly they do not get increase. They do not get increase in their number, or they do not divide after a certain age, right? But still in few regions in the brain, they find that like after meditation, they found to be increased, right? And then increased cortical thickness also in a few of the areas where cortical columns, which includes a number of neurons, can also be increased. But it is not just a number of neurons. There could be number of glial cells also increased. It's like number of neurons would be much lesser than compared to number of glial cells. And glial cells का काम क्या होता है? To support the whole functional architecture of neurons, the structural architecture of the neurons, right? तो even glial cells भी अगर increase होते हैं तो भी gray matter volume increase हो सकता है. Okay. स्ट्रक्चरल चेंजेस में व्हाइट मैटर ट्रैक्ट्स को देखते हैं, जिसमें उन्होंने देखा, जो मेरी स्टडी थी उसमें मैंने देखा कि कॉर्पस कैलोसम का जो पार्ट है विच बेसिकली इज दिस पार्ट, ये जो आप देख रहे हैं, ये जो फाइबर्स हैं इस पर्टिकुलर रीजन में सिंगुलेट है. आई थिंक इन द नेक्स्ट स्लाइड इट शुड बी देयर. ओके, इट्स नॉट देयर. तो देयर इज वन रीजन विच इज बेसिकली जो ब्रेन के दो हेमिस्फेयर्स होते हैं उनके बीच में एक ट्रैक्ट रन करता है विच इज कॉल्ड एज कॉर्पस कैलोसम. जो सबसे ज्यादा जो हम लेफ्ट ब्रेन राइट ब्रेन का जो हम कॉन्सेप्ट की हम बात करते हैं, तो लेफ्ट से राइट में इंफॉर्मेशन कैसे पहुंच रही है, राइट से लेफ्ट में इंफॉर्मेशन कैसे पहुंच रही है? थ्रू द कॉर्पस कैलोसम फाइबर. सो इन माई स्टडी ऑल्सो आई हैव सीन दैट कॉर्पस कैलोसम फाइबर हैव इंक्रीज्ड. आई मीन उनकी इंटीग्रिटी इंक्रीज हुई है ना. एजिंग में लोगों ने बहुत सारे चेंजेस देखे हैं. जीन्स और मेडिटेशन का भी बहुत अच्छा रोल है कि देयर इज वन कॉन्सेप्ट विच वी कॉल इट्स टीलोमेर्स. सो टीलोमेर्स क्या है? टीलोमेर्स आर द वेरी एंडिंग ऑफ योर क्रोमोसोम्स, है ना. सो क्रोमोसोम्स में बहुत छोटे से कुछ, बिकॉज जब हम देखते हैं एवरी सिंगल सेल ऑफ योर बॉडी कंटेन्स nucleus, and in that nucleus there are chromosomes are there. So we have around 23 pairs of, not around, exactly 23 pairs of chromosome. And in chromosomes, the distal ends of chromosomes are called as telomere, right? So these regions, telomere. तो जैसे जैसे हमारा एज बढ़ता जाता है, जो जो टीलोमेयर होता है, इनकी लेंथ जो है वो कम होती जाती है. ऑल्सो वाई इट इज सिग्निफिकेंट? बिकॉज टीलोमेयर्स में बहुत सारे फंक्शनल जीन्स होते हैं जो कि अलग अलग तरह के प्रोटीन्स को एक्सप्रेस करते हैं, अलग अलग तरह के फंक्शनल प्रोटीन्स को एक्सप्रेस करने की क्षमता रखते हैं. तो जैसे जैसे एज होती जाती है ये कम होते जाते हैं. पीपल हैव एक्चुअली सीन दैट मेडिटेशन कैन प्रोवाइड even in retreat for 4 weeks, it has changed in telomere length and telomerase activity. Telomerase enzyme जो रहता है, telomerase enzyme is also involved in this activity. And also telomere related gene, TRG gene expression जो है, इसमें changes होते हैं. तो ये बहुत significant studies इस तरह की हुई है कि meditation से genetic level पर भी changes हो सकते हैं. Right? अब इसका significance क्या है? We can try to understand using this video.
Chromosomes. If you zoom in further, you see that the chromosomes are made up of DNA molecules that are 100 million bases long, clonal like a sling. There are repetitive sequences. To be copied. This is called DNA replication. During this process, strand of DNA are unable to continue replicating all the way to the end, which causes the loss of some DNA. And the ends, if you remember, are where the telomeres are. At birth, we have about 10,000 bases. But as we age and our cells divide again and again, we lose those bases. And at 5,000 bases, we begin to die of old age. As telomeres get shorter, humans begin to experience the general effects of aging: loss of muscle, failing memory, poor eyesight, lack of energy, and slower recovery after exercise. What's a telomere? Well, to answer that 1,000 bases, we begin to die of old age. As telomeres get shorter, humans begin to experience the general effects of aging: loss of muscle, failing memory, poor eyesight, lack of energy, and slower recovery after exercise.
Okay, so you see कि telomere Okay. So this study, which was published, ये basically एक study था जो Time magazine, which is one of the most influential magazine, उसमें महर्षि इफेक्ट करके एक इफेक्ट को इन्होंने दिखाया था, which show that if a very specific percent, बहुत smaller percentage of people, if they are practicing meditation of a region, let's say it is 0.1% of the population, then the crime rate decrease, which was very significant, right? So ये बहुत एक significant study थी जिसको महर्षि इफेक्ट के नाम से जाना गया. And why महर्षि इफेक्ट? Because महर्षि महेश योगी, who has given transcendental meditation, उनके द्वारा उनके रिसर्च ग्रुप के द्वारा इस स्टडी को परफॉर्म कराया गया. And why do I need to mention it here? So when I told you that how does meditation bringing change from self to family and from family to the whole world, how you're bringing the change. So this is one of the best example to demonstrate that how meditation is bringing change, right? And this is one of the significant factor with which I got motivated. I get motivated every day that if Maharishi effect kind of studies are there, then there are subtle changes, and not even subtle, there are major changes which we can do by if all of us are able to do meditate at some point of time in our life, right? So this is another example. If you remember, in some 5-6 years back, in the Thailand, whole football soccer team, along with their coach, was stuck. And there are multiple documentaries also which are there on Netflix and other places which you can see how Buddhist meditation kept the Thai boys calm in the cave for around. They were around 21 days. Stayed in the cage. They stayed in this cave without having any food, without having any water was there, but they were not able to drink that water. So how they could calm their body? How they could, just imagine a situation where you are locked in a room for 2 days. It'll be very frustrating. You'll be annoyed, and you will show kind of a symptom which are very similar to a person who is staying in a mental asylum, right? So because humans are a social animal, and if we do not find social cohesion, if you don't find people around us, it gives us most of us gives some kind of anxiety, right? So imagine if they were staying in 21 days for 21 days in this cave, how they could manage it, right? So it's an assumption. Obviously, that's not a study, but they said that the coach was a Buddhist monk, and he trained all the students who were there for this soccer team about meditating, and they practice it, and they lowered their metabolic rate. So when I'm saying lower their metabolic rate, try to understand there is a need for a body for when you are consuming oxygen or anything, any kind of task when you're doing, whether you're thinking about something, whether you think about future, even you're sitting, you're doing mind wandering, lot of energy gets consumed in that. So when you are practicing meditation, this kind of situation will occur. So you can reduce your metabolic rate, you can regulate your metabolic rate, and that's why it is very significant contribution in your even routine life as well as for situation like this, right? So these are few of the examples which I have given you that why meditation is important to study, why why we wanted to study meditation in terms of be it the changes of EEG, using the EEG, fMRI, or even some kind of cognitive changes if we can measure. In the parallel session, few of the brothers and sisters are learning that how they can look the changes which are happening because of they can measure the changes in the cognitive processes such as attention and memory, different attention types, whether be it focused attention, be it other kind of cognitive control paradigms. So other things also can be assessed using it. So this is the end of the session, and now I'm open for the questions. So people can ask as many as questions they want. Yeah, mic can be given to them. That we are doing meditation, we do meditation, sit and do meditation. But there is one thing
which perhaps has been overlooked, and the people who have been practicing meditation for maybe 20 years, 20, 15 years, they would say, narrate that thing to you. For us, meditation is not a 1 hour job. Can I have your attention, please? For us, for the people who have into meditation for long, it's not a 1 hour affair for us. What we do in the morning and the evening, it's nothing of that sort. We have been told that we have a meditative lifestyle. Most of the time when we are not sitting, still there is something in our mind that is keep taking place because of our attention span. And we are into a lifestyle where we are supposed to be constantly observing our thoughts. We are constantly doing it, even if we are not actively meditating. So that aspect has perhaps not been incorporated. When you compare Raj Yoga meditation with transcendental meditation and other forms of meditation, perhaps that thing has been overlooked. And for people who are into Raj Yoga meditation for long, for us, it's a way of thinking, it's a way of life. So how do you come to that? Because most of us, when we grow old, we don't do usual form of meditation. We are into it day in and day out. So how does your this EEG and other things would incorporate that aspect of our lives? Thank you.
So, brother has asked a very good question, and so I tell you, there are certain limitations of scientific methods to understand much about meditation. Always, if there are some certain lifestyle measures are being taken when we are talking about the Raj Yoga, it is not just the meditation which is bringing changes. It is the whole lifestyle which is bringing changes, right? In other meditation traits also, they are also bringing some lifestyle changes. But yeah, that is how chronically any lifestyle is bringing changes are actually a very good part of the study, right? So we can do this. Anything, I request Dr. Sushil also to throw light on this based on his.
I think, brother, I'd like to understand your question. Are you looking for an answer to have a comparative study? Are you saying this? Or you are trying to say, which I think Dr. Kanishk has already answered. No, in fact, I appreciate your question. I'll answer it in 3 ways. One is, most of the time the studies are being done on single practices. Any contemplative practices, whether it is transcendental meditation, whether it is Raj Yoga meditation, whether it is Sudarshan Kriya Yoga or mindfulness-based meditation. That's most of the studies in the whole world are based on one. Because specifically there are 2 challenges. One, no group, I'm using a little wrong word, no group wants to be compared. So most of the time, it is not permitted in most of the studies. Kanishk, are there few studies related to both comparison?
So there are multiple comparison people have done, but they have done comparative analysis of Vipassana meditation with mindfulness or even certain. But yeah, obviously because Raj Yoga is still unexplored.
No. I'm not saying only for Raj Yoga, but to the best of my knowledge, he is saying, so he might be knowing. I'm not contradicting, but it is a challenge. So normally the comparative studies are not encouraged, because then in that case, even if the person who is conducting those studies has to get the permission from both the things, if he's saying, then it must be there. But to the best of my knowledge, I have not come across. That is one biggest challenge. Second, it is a perception of every group that it is a whole lifestyle changes. Whether it in Raj Yoga meditation also we feel it, in case of mindfulness based meditation also they feel it, it's a whole lifestyle changes. Only thing is few research paper which are published or on a defined, designed study. So that's the only thing is. So we come across few papers and based on that we define their total working. No, it's not that. But in case, as he's saying, if there are comparative studies also, Because in case of a Raj Yoga, yes, Brahma Kumaris is definitely open to conduct those kinds of studies. But normally we also don't get who are ready to come from Sudarshan Kriya Yoga and then compare for that. So that's a major challenge in conducting it.
Yeah, thank you for supplementing the answer. And obviously, it is challenging as well as there are other ethical questions also, and not even ethical. There are multiple other things because meditation is a whole domain, and a lot of people are doing different exercises. So instead of fighting for that, our meditation is better than the other meditation. Why can we complement? Because different meditation styles have different effects on brain. Let's say breathing exercise would be more beneficial if the person is more prone and they are living in the like tropical regions like this place, like in Delhi, like other place. But if the same person will go to the high altitude area, then that might not work. Why? Because oxygen concentration is already low. When they do more breathing exercise there, then they require a lot of oxygen to actually do that respiration, do that breathing. So there, that the breathing exercise based meditation what would not work. Might be the Raj Yoga or might be the focused attention, might be one with the closed eyes would be much better than that, right? So that's why instead of looking for comparison, we look for how we can complement and can create maybe a module which can come up with the addition of different meditation practice and which can be a universal meditation. Right. So, brother from online also have asked this question that for meditation research, while capturing the EEG data, do we need to take all 64 channels off with less or important channel? Also, can we do the research? So, my answer to this question is that when we do research on meditation or any kind of study which we do, it is up to what kind of analysis we are focused to do. But in basic analysis, we can see that what all changes are happening in brain with respect to number of channel reduction or number of channel addition is subjective to like density of the electrodes which we are referring to. If we are taking 40 number of channels, then the kind of data what we are recording from the brain is less dense compared to higher number of channels, let's say 64 or 256, which is much denser. But if we are looking for any specific kind of changes, let's say if we want to see the changes only in the occipital region, if you are so sure about that, whatever we are bringing, whatever kind of practice we are doing is bringing changes in the occipital area. So this will create this kind of experimentation. We can take even less number of channels, even 4 or 5 number of channels. We can take the data from occipital only. So subjective to what kind of analysis you want, you can decide about the number of channels. Yeah. Any more questions? Yeah.
Sir, you have talked about high gray matter volume in meditators and increased cortical thickness in meditators, and also about functional activation and deactivation of some areas. So my question is, do all these parameters we can get from EEG? We have learned about EEG pre-processing, right? But we have not seen what output, what conclusions are we drawing from that EEG data.
Okay, so one thing which I already made it clear that when we talk about the cortical thickness, when we talk about the gray matter and the white matter related questions, so it is not subjective to the EEG research. For that, we used different techniques like fMRI or DTI or let's say even PET scan can also be used for that. But it is not related to the EEG. I mean, EEG does not have that functional capacity to do that kind of research. Yes, we can use the source localization technique, which basically provide us the estimation that where from this particular electrical current is being generated. So we can look for what are the current centers in the brain, but that also will be very limited to the cortical regions. जो हमने cortical surface जो area देखा, ये cortical regions जो है, उन cortical region में कहाँ generate हो रहा है, उसको हम पता लगा सकते हैं. Even to get to know about subcortical regions, it is very limited knowledge which EEG can provide. For that, imaging methods are more advanced. That's why when I told you about the spatial and the temporal resolution. So temporal resolution matlab, if something is happening in brain at some point of time, how early we can get to know is subjective to the EEG. How focused in which particular area it is focused to is more subjected to the brain imaging, neuroimaging methods such as fMRI and DTI. Apart from that, the second question did you ask about how do we see? That is also I made clear. If you could have missed that, whatever is our result based on the like initial visualization, that you see the topo plots. So in the topo plots, the whole like top view of the head you see, and you see that based on the heat map or based on the scale, there are certain areas where in the certain areas where the amount of energy is lesser, amount of power or the power is less. So you can see that if the power is less, that means those areas are less active compared to the other areas where the power is high. So this also will gives us the the information that these areas are getting more activated during meditation or even before meditation or even during any kind of task or even during baseline also, right? So based on that, we try to interpret that if this particular area, which is already people have seen, which already scientists have revealed that this particular area is responsible for defined brain function, is getting activated during meditation, there is a high possibility that this particular area is being exercised by constant activation, and whenever it is needed, there are multiple regions which are connected to it and can provide outputs. Yeah.
Sir, is there any effect of meditation on Alzheimer's? Because in Alzheimer's, the connection and coordination between the brain cells become very hard.
Yeah, so in Alzheimer's, we try to understand, we try to bifurcate the symptoms. The major symptom in Alzheimer's is that amnesia is one of the major symptoms. So what happens that due to some pathological conditions, there's one kind of protein which gets deposited in the brain, which is called tau protein. So this tau protein, and like people have tried to study the effect of meditation on Alzheimer's, but since now, since like past 30-40 years, there's no significant study which we can say that which we can rely on that it actually impacts on Alzheimer's also. So not any study in my knowledge till now. Yeah. Any more questions? Yes.
So, since frontal lobe is responsible for decision-making process and all, so I want to know whether EEG, जैसे कि gamma is responsible to like then decision-making or concentration power is high, then gamma get activated, or we will see gamma in a like high voltage or something like that, right? So when मतलब frontal lobe में जब हम देखेंगे तब we can see like gamma getting more into the like actively getting involved, or maybe दूसरे part में temporal part में उतना नहीं दिखाई दे रहा है, something like that, like through EEG.
Acha, okay. So yeah, it's a very good question. So one thing that from all the different bandwidth what we have studied during meditation, or let's not even during meditation, any kind of scientific neuroscientific exploration. So all these different waveforms are responsible for communicating between 2 or 3 or multiple brain areas, right? So consider these are the languages, right? So anyone, like most of us know Hindi or English very well, right? But few people, if consider that people who are well versed coming from Kannada region, so they are well versed with the Kannada. People who are coming from Tamil Nadu are well versed with the Tamil Nadu, with the Tamil language, right? So they can speak very good in Tamil altogether. Similarly, brain areas also communicate or exchange their information in this different frequency. Another thing that there are multiple regions which can switch to multiple frequencies, and ultimately when we look for these frequencies, these are a summation of multiple currents which are present in the projectile neurons, or when I say pyramidal neurons, or multiple neurons which are even in the subcortical region. Thalamus ho gaya, hypothalamus ho gaya, which are hippocampus ho gaya, all these different regions which are subcortically present, their summation of activity gets collected at the end of pyramidal neurons, which are basically tangentially located. जो भी हम एक्टिविटी देते हैं उनके टेंजेंशियल में, दैट मींस उनके परपेंडिकुलर में लोकेटेड हैं वो सारे न्यूरॉन्स जिनसे हम वो इलेक्ट्रिकल एक्टिविटी रिकॉर्ड कर रहे हैं. तो there are multiple significance of whether the gamma range, gamma वी आर रिकॉर्डिंग फ्रॉम फ्रंटल, वेदर वी आर रिकॉर्डिंग अल्फा फ्रॉम फ्रंटल। तो सबके अपने अपने मीनिंग्स हो सकते हैं, बट दोज मीनिंग्स कैन बी कोरिलेटेड ओनली विद रेस्पेक्ट टू व्हाट काइंड ऑफ टास्क इज बीन गिवन टू द। यूजुअली जो एक मेजर क्लासिफिकेशन इन सारे बैंडविड्थ का है, दैट इज दैट अल्फा इज मोर फॉर द रिलैक्सेशन, व्हेन यू आर रिलैक्स, व्हेन यू आर away from any kind of sensory stimulation, alpha is very much active. When your brain part is showing beta, which majorly you see from the motor cortex, when you're moving, when you do any kind of movements or any kind of attention task. When you are more attentive, when you are deeply engaged into any task, then gamma frequencies are activated. I tell you one more significance, which in the in the last year when I was working in Center for Neuroscience at IISc, what we were trying to do. So we have recorded data of around 484, more than not even 400, around 517 patients, including patients, normal subjects also were there. So when we recorded their data, what we have shown them a grating. Grating is just like a white and a black stripe stitched together. And when we flip that at a certain angle, when we show that to the subjects, their occipital cortex emits gamma rays. So what we could establish that whenever we show this, their occipital cortex is trying to understand what you are trying to show over there, right? And our brain also, anything what we see, like if I look at the face, if I look at the whole surrounding, I see this as in the form of those gratings. That's a very basic functional unit of any visual scene which we see, right? So when I show that, I could see that brain's occipital cortex is emitting gamma in a very specific frequency, which is 35 to like 25 to 34 hertz and 36 to 66 hertz. This whole band was very high when I showed them this frequency. When I switched that off, then it was not visible. Only during the time when I'm showing this. After this, what we have done, we try to classify subjects based on their age. तो हमने 50 के बिलो के जो सब्जेक्ट्स लिए थे, उन लोगों का डेटा देखा और 50 प्लस के लोगों का डेटा देखा। तो हमने देखा कि व्हेन वी आर शोइंग दिस ग्रेटिंग टू 50 लेस देन 50 ईयर्स के इंडिविजुअल्स, सो द गामा पावर ऑफ गामा, अभी आपने देखा था जो टोपर प्लॉट्स हमने पावर दिखाया, पावर कैन बी रिड्यूस। गामा का स्पेसिफिक पावर जो था वो it was higher in the individual with less than 50 compared to individuals with more than 50. So this could be established as a neurodegenerative factor, which neurodegenerative significance or you can say signature of this, right? So there इसी तरह से बहुत सारी अलग अलग स्टडीज में we try to understand brain function using different brain bandwidth frequencies, right? Could I answer your question? Okay. Yeah. Any more questions? Medulla area. So medulla is more of a functional activation. I mean, more of the vital functions are very much involved with the medulla area, right? When you breathe, so not even medulla, the whole brainstem area, which includes midbrain, pons, and the medulla. So these are responsible for the vital functions. So challenges is that the brainstem is located at the very distal end, from which we cannot record the data using the EEG. I mean, we can record the data, but hardly you will get the kind of electrical sensation which are happening there. We can record using the EEG. So for that, people have used electrocorticography, which they can put down on the cortical surface or even the surface of this brainstem. But again, the challenge is that because they possess the vital functions, people hardly do any kind of experimentation on these areas. So I'm not very much familiar with any studies which say that during in the pons or medulla area, any kind of activations are happening in meditation.
Sir, I have a question. My research. In case the student gets into the field of mathematics by thinking that the certain question or a problem asked, once gamma goes up, or what happens? Like, कोई अगर किसी बच्चे को मैथमेटिक्स का क्वेश्चन दिया जाता है और वो घबरा जाता है, तो एंजाइटी जो साइंस फिजियोलॉजिकली हमें दिखते हैं, में रेस कौन सा दिखेगी, गामा दिखेंगी
या लगेगा घबराहट में मैं ये जानना चाहता हूँ हम उसको क्या बोलते
Okay, so different mental states can be represented using EEG. जैसे आपने बोला anxiety could be one of the mental states, right? So anxiety के जो signature है, according to like whatever I have studies, is majorly towards the higher, this higher waveform. I mean higher frequencies, more towards the beta and the gamma, right? So ultimately, you need to look forward that what is the bifurcation of any kind of mental sorry, any kind of mental state you're trying to understand, right? So forget like phobias or some situation where somebody is getting fear of something. So there are other behavioral variables which we can record during that time, right? Let's say people like students, if we have phobia or any other who has phobia, they get anxiety, they get autonomic nervous system gets activated, their heartbeat can be increased. So not even with EEG, there are other methods also which along with or supplementing the EEG, we can record to actually understand what is happening during that time. But regarding
Sir.
this phobia,
इसी में नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन में जा रहा हूँ। जैसे आपने बताया कि प्रैक्टिस से जो है माइंड काम हो जाता है। आपने गाड़ी का बताया एग्जाम्पल कि हम गाड़ी चला रहे हैं, उस समय हम गाड़ी भी चला रहे हैं और फिर हम और भी कुछ काम कर रहे होते हैं। तो जो लोग मैथमेटिक्स में प्रैक्टिस करके आगे बढ़ जाते हैं, क्या उनमें ऐसा हो सकता है कि हम अल्फा को हाई पाएं? ऐसा पॉसिबिलिटी है?
there is a possibility, but I cannot generalize anything.
No, because that's the area I want to research in.
So my answer to this is that there are other factors which also involved when you record the data and hum usme se. So there are different kind of personalities. There are how any person is responding to any particular situation. So even in EEG also what we face is there are individual differences. तो आप अगर बोलेंगे कि when we have recorded the data, तो उस data को जैसे हमने record किया when we have shown a picture or maybe just a still image, not even a video, उस still image को दिखा के कोई एक individual का जो brain wave है वो pattern को अगर हम दूसरे individual के brain wave से match करेंगे तो it will not be the Xerox of it. It will never be a Xerox of it because brain also provides its own cortical signatures. Everybody has different cortical signatures, right? So there are multiple factors of which are involved in this. तो उन factors में हम common factors क्या हैं जो कि why do we do the background? So there are two things which we try to understand using EEG. One is the background activity. One is the functional activity which we try to understand. Functional activity which is focused to the task or which is focused to the stimuli which we are given. And background activity is something which if they are not engaged into any task, what is happening in the brain? We try to subtract it and then try to understand how their brain is perceiving or responding to a particular cue. So we can talk later also about designing the task. So I think it's time. We'll take one more question. Yes, multiple of the ERP studies people have done, and be it the cognitive control, be it different kind of alertness, orientation, and decision making, the conflict resolution. People have seen a lot of other components. Let's say this P1, P2 component, which is positive component. P1 is a component which comes as soon as you show any stimulus. Just after 100 millisecond, around that 100 millisecond, there's a positive peak which is generated. When I say positive, it's a polarity of the peak. When I say negative, it's a polarity of the peak again. So people have seen this. P300 is another variable which people have, extensively studied during the meditation that any kind of cognitive functions, be it any kind of cognitive functions which we can test using a cognitive paradigm where any stimulus is being shown or being given to the ears, right? Any auditory or any visual stimulus being given. So a lot of studies are there. There is a paper which you can explore meditation traits and states. So this has a lot of studies related to ERP, EEG, and fMRI. It's a good review paper which you can read. Yes, so this, yeah, okay, this is the final question. Any other questions, you can redirect to me on my email and phone number. My phone number is already there in the registration form, and email I will write it here. Yeah. It's a very interesting question, as well as the whole neuroscience, like scientific community is looking for the answer कि जो हमारे ब्रेन में चेंजेस होते हैं उसका फ्रीक्वेंट, मतलब वो चेंज का ऑनसेट क्या है, कब वो चेंजेस, कितने दिन में वो चेंजेस हो सकते हैं इफ वी डू मेडिटेशन. दैट्स व्हाई क्लिनिकल स्टडीज में हमने देखा है कि हम कोई मेडिसिन देते हैं, आप देखते हैं ना कि डॉक्टर्स अगर कोई मेडिसिन देते हैं तो दे आस्क यू कि किस तरह के चेंजेस आपके यहाँ हो रहे हैं. उस तरह के चेंजेस को देते हुए दे कैन रिड्यूस और इंक्रीज द dosage, right? Similarly with meditation also, how it is like reflected in your behavior would be the first thing which you can see. So let's say if you are very prone to any emotional trauma, any emotional thing happen in your life, then you tend to get panic, you tend to get more anxiety. If you practice meditation behaviorally, you will see that okay, my anxiety and depression gets, not depression, my anxiety or panics get reduced. uh, they can correlate with multiple things, but there is a possibility that you will not see anything in EEG, but there are certain behavioral changes which might occur, right? So it's not that you have to verify anything with EEG, but EEG can verify the behavioral changes, right? So it is not vice versa. It is always one directional. When you record an EEG, if you do not have any information about why, when, whose data has been recorded, and with what, when you have recorded this data, what have been shown, what kind of a stimuli was there, and nothing is interpretable. That is also one thing which we can study. अच्छा, तो आपने मेडिटेशन किया, मेडिटेशन करने से बिहेवियर में कुछ चेंजेस आपके आए, तो वो बिहेवियरल चेंजेस को अगर आप बोलते हैं बिहेवियरल चेंजेस आए तो उसको हम वेरीफाई करने की कोशिश कर सकते हैं यूजिंग ईईजी, बट ऐसा जरूरी नहीं कि ईईजी में वो सारे चेंजेस रिफ्लेक्ट हों. कई बार बिहेवियर में वो चेंजेस आते हैं, ईईजी में वो चेंजेस नहीं आते हैं, राइट? तो ईईजी इज नॉट द श्योर शॉट सोल्यूशन कि आपको ईईजी में वो चेंजेस दिखाई पड़े तभी आपको लगेगा कि हमारे ब्रेन में चेंजेस हुए हैं, ऐसा जरूरी नहीं है, राइट? थैंक यू. So we'll close the session here, and for any other further question आप लोग फोन कर सकते हैं, ईमेल कर सकते हैं, और कनेक्ट रह सकते हैं. कोई बहुत मतलब 2 दिन के वर्कशॉप था, बहुत कम समय में हमने बहुत सारे सेशंस को कवर किए, बहुत सारी चीजों को कवर किया, एंड आई एम वेरी थैंकफुल फॉर ऑल ऑफ यू टू पार्टिसिपेट इन दिस वर्कशॉप. और बहुत सारे लोग बहुत दूर दूर से आए हैं, तो कोई भी शिकायत, कोई भी फीडबैक है, हम लोगों ने एक फीडबैक फॉर्म बनाया है गूगल फॉर्म पर, तो वो फीडबैक फॉर्म आप सब लोग, मेरा रिक्वेस्ट है सब लोग उसको प्लीज फिल करें और ऑनेस्ट रिव्यूज उसमें दें. आप चाहें तो अपना आइडेंटिटी उसमें कॉन्फिडेंशियल रख सकते हैं, सो नोबडी विल गेट टू नो अबाउट दैट किसने रिस्पॉन्स दिया हुआ है, ठीक है? तो थैंक यू सो मच, एंड ओवर टू डॉक्टर सुशील चंद्रा.
तो आप सबको हम एक क्वेश्चनर और मेल करेंगे जिसमें बेसिकली हम इंफॉर्मेशन जानना चाहेंगे आपके हेल्थ के बारे में, और आप जो भी के प्रैक्टिसेस हैं वो कितना रेगुलरली कर रहे हैं. वो एनोनिमस ही रहेगा, बट वी वुड जस्ट वांट टू नो सम ऑफ दैट इंफॉर्मेशन, ताकि हम आपके इमोशनल इंटेलिजेंस से उसको रिलेट कर सकें, सिंस हमें पता है वो. तो उस क्वेश्चनर में एक वो भी रहेगा क्वेश्चन जिसमें हम आपसे पूछेंगे कि आपका इमोशनल इंटेलिजेंस का स्कोर कितना था. तो आप वो भी प्लीज मेंशन कर दीजिएगा, आपको याद हो तो. याद नहीं है तो कोई बात नहीं, ठीक है? थैंक यू.
इस टाइप की अगर कोई भी ऑपरेशनल प्रॉब्लम्स हो, लकीली एवरीबडी हैज गॉट हिज नंबर एंड ऑल, आप लोग बिल्कुल फ्री महसूस करें अपने को, और किसी भी समय बिल्कुल उसमें चीजों को भेज सकते हैं। फर्स्टली मैं ये पूछना चाहूंगा, फीडबैक तो आएगा पूरा, आप लोग उम्मीद करते हैं ये आप सब लोगों के लिए यूजफुल रहा? ओके। और मैं केवल एक उद्देश्य लास्ट में कहना चाहूंगा जो मैंने कई दफे रिपीट किया है, हम लोग 2 दिन में एक्सपर्ट नहीं हो जाएंगे, बट 2 दिन में किस तरीके से हर एक के अपने अपने एक्सपर्ट एरियाज हैं। सम brother or sister might be teaching somewhere, somebody might be already a researcher, somebody might be in a corporate. तो हम किस तरीके से इन सुविधाओं से यूज करके उन कॉर्पोरेट के डाटा के बेसिस पे, उन स्कूल के बच्चों के डाटा के बेसिस पे हम इन चीजों को किस तरीके से रिजल्ट निकाल सकते हैं। अगेन यहां पर भी दोनों, नो डाउट नॉन बी केस, देयर आर वेरी फ्यू, आई रिमेंबर हर। सो अपनी स्टडी में किस भी तरीके से हम लोगों ने कोशिश किया है मेन ईजी को लेके, बट इसीलिए आप लोगों ने देखा हो कंप्लीट फैकल्टी इज देयर, तो साइकोलॉजिकल पैरामीटर्स को भी अभी भी आप लोगों ने पैरेलल में सेशन इसीलिए किया कि इस तरीके से इन चीजों को किस तरीके से हम इवेल्युएट कर सकते हैं डिफरेंट सेक्टर्स के लिए। तो मैं केवल एक लाइन में फाइनली कंक्लूड कर रहा हूं, आप सभी लोग डिफरेंट सेक्टर्स पे जो भी कार्य कर रहे हैं उसको मेडिटेशन एज एन इंटरवेंशन और एनी अदर थिंग ऑल्सो एज एन इंटरवेंशन, मैं दोनों क्यों बोला, बिकॉज नॉन बीकेज आर ऑल्सो देयर। सो वो अगर उस तरीके से हम किस टाइप के चेंजेस या इंप्रूवमेंट लेके आ रहे हैं उन इंटरवेंशन से, उसको करने के लिए ये एक छोटा सा प्रयत्न था। आई एम होपफुल दैट इट माइट हैव बीन यूजफुल फॉर एनीवन एंड एवरीवन. Kanishk has already said it. You are always open to connect for any time on mail and even on WhatsApp and all. That's point number 1. Point number 2, in case if anyone wants collaborative studies purely with RU, means Rishihud University, that is also possible. Brahma Kumaris separately, and tie up 3 organization is also a feasibility. Suppose somebody is in MIT University and MIT University wants a collaboration to do some meditation study, but on Raj Yoga meditation. So all 3 parties also can be part of the research. तो ये सोचते हुए इस चीज को यहाँ पर ये कंडक्ट किया गया है. This is conclusion, not conclusion. मैं भाई 1-2 लाइन मैंने शायद अनाउंस भी इसलिए करवाया था, जैसे हमारे यहाँ से शुभांगी है, she has recently joined RU Rishihud University, but she is teaching in a school. तो अगर स्कूल के बच्चों को लेके उस पे अगर कुछ हमें राजयोग मेडिटेशन का करना है, ये मैं एक एग्जांपल बताने के लिए कर रहा हूँ, नॉट फॉर हर. जैसे साक्षी है, शी इज डूइंग ऑन यूजी पीजी स्टूडेंट्स, तो हम हायर एजुकेशन में किस तरीके से कर रहे हैं, उसी तरीके से शोभिका, शी इज डूइंग ऑन लॉट्स ऑफ बीकेज एंड कॉर्पोरेट डाटा. तो इस तरीके से ये लोग पीएचडी कर रहे हैं, न केवल पीएचडी, अदरवाइज भी हम लोग इस सब चीजों को कार्यों को कर सकते हैं. मेरे से रिलेटेड कोई हाथ 1 या 2 क्वेश्चन तो आई कैन ट्राई टू आंसर, अदरवाइज आई थिंक मोस्ट ऑफ द आंसर्स Kanishk has already given. I am really thankful, he has already said it. I am thankful of firstly Shibaba, because of whose blessings this has been a possibility. Second, both the organizations, whether it is Brahma Kumaris, whether it is Rishihud University, इसके दोनों के full cooperation से ये हुआ है. Last but not the least, there are 2 major components. One is the faculty. My whole faculty is here, so I'm really thankful, including my students. And last, which is the most important, all of you, you came here, and I am hopeful that all of you will apply in all your sectors. Thank you. Om Shanti.
Thank you all. Thank you, sir. Just one announcement to you all of you, that we'll be providing certificate shortly to you. So most probably next week tak you all get the certificates. Thank you.
अगर सर्टिफिकेट जो स्पेशली डॉन बीकेज हैं उनको हार्डकोर प्रिंट कंपलसरी होगा शायद, तो वो बाई पोस्ट भेज दिया जाएगा। वर्चुअल सभी का भेजा जाएगा, बट और लोगों को भी अगर हार्ड का जरूरत होगा तो वो भेज दिया जाएगा। इज इट ओके? एवरीबडी फाइन विद इट? थैंक यू।
Last ritual, can we have a selfie? Brother, so selfie में इतना बड़ा progress. Maybe a little thanks from my side for हाँ डेफिनेटली ग्रुप फोटो भी हम करेंगे। सो एक बहुत बड़ा थैंक्स आता है फॉर द सपोर्टिंग टीम, जो भाई